positions, which makes quorum 3. So therefore, any sort of affirmative or vote against would need 3 people to approve it versus the typical vote of 4 if we were a full board of 7.
So within the bounds of 3, I think we have a quorum.
You do, you have actually all 5 because Tanya is online.
That's great. Okay, we're in a position to go. I'd like to call this meeting, the June 7th Board of Trustees meeting, together at about 7:04. Macy, can you go through roll call, please?
Trustee Blakemore. Here. Trustee Corvalon.
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Here.
And Trustee Baumhover.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're underway. We're going to go first to the consent agenda, and I wanted to, before we bring a motion, a couple of things I wanted to point out. The May 17th minutes will be removed from now because they need some further amending. We'll bring them back next.
So you're going to need to make a motion to remove those and then have that seconded and voted on. They do need to be removed because there is a public comment that needs to be corrected that we just learned about. So we want to make a motion for that.
Is that the May 17th?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, I move that we remove the May 17th meeting minutes from the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Macy, call the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
And Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you.
One more thing I wanted to point out, on the June 1st minutes, there was a very minor change that was made between what went into the packet, and then that was amended. So those of you who were working with the most up to the minute packet have it, but it was just a misspelling, that's all. And so with that, do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover.
Yes.
And Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we're through the consent agenda. It's now time for public comment on non-agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Prior to providing comment, the speaker should state their name and indicate whether or not they're a Nederland resident. And if not a resident, the speaker should indicate their affiliation with the town. Who is registered tonight to speak?
There's no one registered for public comment on non-agenda items at this time.
Macy, does anybody online put their hand up?
I can see that too,
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Hold, so no one online has put their hand up.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have anything to say? Okay. May, last call for public comment if you want to say something. I just knew.
May Gerald, Town of Nederland resident. I have just a couple quick comments. One is, I noticed the meetings aren't being posted at the post office. And I want to suggest that someone on the board take the initiative to implement some of the recommendations from the public engagement group of Envision 2030, because we seem to be going in the wrong direction. We don't even have a paper copy of the agenda. I mean, I know we need to save trees and everything, but I think we're going too far. And I think we should have an additional place where we have our information, where we're tracking projects like home rule and the issues, large issues that are before the town, and have the information at the library like we used to. And that brings me to the home rule question, which from the size of the agenda, and I see there's some really interesting things that you are discussing tonight, including wildfire, that to me looks like a whole meeting in and of itself, and one that if it had been properly noticed to the public, a lot of people would have showed up to hear the discussion, review the document. And the reason people don't show up at the meetings sometimes, I'm sure there was a lot of people here tonight, maybe for that. But, and then, so that's all by way of saying that what the agenda packet is over 500 pages tonight. And I noticed that the home rule question is at the very end of the agenda. I'm personally not convinced that home rule is right for our town. I think this is a question that should be publicly discussed at a time when the public is available for discussion. And when the board has the mental bandwidth to deal with it. And I think that it's disingenuous to put it on the agenda because we had this happen with the IGA annexation agreement where it was noticed that it was discussed over and over again as a last agenda item, and usually it would be at 10:55 and it'd be like, okay, we'll talk about it later. But then when someone goes back, oh, well, yeah, we had it on the agenda here, but you never had anybody there to talk about that issue. So I had a private conversation with you, my neighbor, and you, I thought, assured me that we weren't going to be making these late meetings anymore, that the meetings would be timely. And so I can be timely, and I'd like to see you guys do as well.
Thanks. I forgot to, at the beginning, to have you identify yourself for the recording.
I think I did.
Okay, good.
May Gerald,
And
Nederland resident.
Thank you.
clarifying question, can I get my, I'm going to go back, can I go back to what we did in that subcommittee in terms of where things should be posted? And I'd like to take a look at that. And
So I'd
Okay,
like to offer
great.
clarification that the legal posting location is town hall. Anything else is supplemental.
got it.
So the post office, Facebook, website, the goal is always to post in those, but that is not the legal posting site.
In May, when we're done, you can have my copy of the minutes.
Well, I won't be here probably when you're done. I'll probably be asleep for 3 hours when you're done. So,
Yeah. I,
well, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
when I walk into a meeting, I want to review the agenda. I don't have a tablet that I carry around with me.
right.
Not everybody is equipped the same way. That's what makes our community diverse. But I would really like to move forward. I'm sure the committee and the recommendations of the committee.
I'll bring you a copy on Saturday morning.
Huh?
I'll bring you a copy on Saturday morning.
No, I'm saying, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying there should be one here. We should have a copy of the agenda. There should be one at the post office. There should be one at the library.
Okay.
There's no reason not to spend a few sheets of paper. And I mean, I know that you guys are using paper and other resources. It seems like a fool's mission to not put anything on paper.
Thank you. Thanks, May.
Thank you.
You barely made it, but thanks for coming. Is there anybody else that's put their hand up?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're clear? Very good. Then we're going to move on to public comment on, public comment on non-agenda items. We just finished. Now we're moving on to action items. Public comment can be given for each action item when called for by the chair. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes as it was in the last session. Let's go on to 5.1, Pride Proclamation. You want to set it up for us, please?
So I don't know if we have Natalie in the room. Okay, it's me. I'll do it.
Okay.
So every June, we bring before you a Pride Proclamation. So what we're asking is that the Board of Trustees designate and celebrate June as LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And then the way in which we can honor and celebrate and dedicate this month is through the adoption of a proclamation, which if and upon adoption, Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, you will read into the record. We're also flying a flag outside of Town Hall, and those are the two ways in which Out Boulder County has asked that we acknowledge this month. So the question before you is, do you approve Resolution 2022-33 proclaiming June as Pride Month?
Okay. So at this point, we go right to the, to read the proclamation.
You'll read the proclamation after adopted. I don't know if any of the board members have comments or questions, but you could call for that. Do public comment,
Sure.
then vote on the resolution, and then read the proclamation.
Good, okay. Okay, first let's go, does anybody on the board want to speak about this one? We're good? Any public comment?
This is Natalie Longini. I just wanted to show my support for the proclamation.
Thank you. Anybody else? And we need to read it before we resolve it.
No, so you could, I would recommend adopting the resolution and then you read it into the record.
Okay.
I move to approve Resolution 2022-33, June Pride Month proclamation.
I'll second it, but did we ask for public comment?
We did.
We did. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, good. Macy, call the vote.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, action item 5.2.
Will you read that proclamation into the record, Mayor Pro
I
Tem?
will read
Mould?
it into the record,
Thanks.
yeah. Resolution 2022.33, titled June Pride Month Proclamation. Whereas all residents deserve the right to live in a town that respects their dignity, safety, and overall well-being by being supported by equality and fair treatment for all. And whereas the town of Nederland has a diverse LGBTQ plus community that includes people of many backgrounds, identities, and philosophies. And whereas the diversity of the community is a community asset and that enhances and enriches all of our lives and all community members. And whereas LGBTQ plus community members have made and continue to make great and lasting contributions to strengthen the fabric of our community. And whereas during the month of June, the residents of the town of Nederland are encouraged to honor the history, diversity, and resilience of LGBTQ plus communities. And whereas the town of Nederland honors its commitment to promotion and protection of human rights of LGBTQ plus residents, therefore, we, the town of Nederland, do hereby proclaim June 2022 to be LGBTQ Pride Month and urge all residents to respect and honor our diverse community and celebrate and build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance. Approved and adopted on the 7th day of June 2022, and I'll sign this tonight. Thanks all. We're complete on 5.1. Yes, Miranda? Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to 5.2. Tell us what this is.
So, and we've got Katrina Harms on who's going to present this, but we're also asking you to do another proclamation tonight, which would be declaring this Saturday, June 11th, as Chris Current Day of Community Service. And I'd like to invite Katrina to share a little bit more about all that Chris Current has done for the community and this Saturday's event.
Thanks, Miranda. Thank you, Board of Trustees, for hearing this and making this proclamation. I think you said proclamation. Anyway, it's my honor and privilege to introduce this item and talk a little bit about Chris. She doesn't like to talk about herself, so I'm just going to run through some of the highlights really quick so that people who aren't aware of how much she has done for the community have some concept of how important she has been and how important it is now for her to retire and take some time off with her husband, Dave, and her family and her garden. In 1986, and not all of my dates are going to be exactly correct, but in 1986 or thereabouts, Eldora closed and for a few years was not open. And a few people, including Chris, were concerned about the families and people in the community who relied on Eldora for food and for their job and for their income. And they got together and started collecting food and eventually had a more permanent-ish food pantry. And we're not talking about a lot of people, but it made a huge impact on the people. And I'm sure people who live here today had benefited from that time, as Eldora has been a long time employer. They stored the Herculean effort even then for even the few families or less than we're doing now was the fact that they stored the food at St. Rita's, and then on Saturday morning or whenever their pantries were, they would put all the food in their cars and go over to the Presbyterian Church for distribution. And they did this for many, many years. And as far as I can tell, they might have done that for about 20 years, moving food from St. Rita's to the Presbyterian Church. In the 2000s, in the recessions that we've had and over time, the need became greater. And it was obvious that schlepping from St. Rita's to the Presbyterian Church was not going to work long term. So they moved the pantry to its current location in the west wing of the community center and have been operating there ever since. And Chris has been a leader, a consistent figure, the one who took charge and made sure there was food and started working with Boulder County. In 2012, 2013, the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services Task Force was formed, and the pantry, along with, and Dennis Whalen, I believe, was on it at that time as well, created took the findings from the task force, which was basically figuring out what was needed human services wise in the Peak to Peak area. And the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services Alliance was eventually formed out of that. And the Nederland Food Pantry is still the core human services agency in the Peak to Peak region, taking care of not just food, but housing and utilities and making sure people are connected with the services that Boulder County offer. We have mountain resource liaisons now, and it's all because of Chris schlepping food from St. Rita to the Presbyterian Church. She was further tested and survived and won, I would say, over the pandemic, taking all of the Boulder County rules and the state rules and protocols and turning the pantry into a outdoor distribution center in winter. Tripled the amount of people that she was serving in not only in Nederland, but creating and supporting pop-ups in Ward, Gold Hill, Jamestown, and before she left, one was added in Wonderview. Because was a strong figure in all of this, getting grants, finding food, creating a welcoming, open place for people to get support and help. Netherlands is a much better place. So I thank you all for considering this. You're voting on it tonight, but it will be presented to Chris on Saturday, sometime between 3 and 5, when we're having her celebration of service at Chapada Park. And I hope that we see a lot of people there to celebrate her hard work. And you can ask her about all of the other stuff that she hasn't been willing to share. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Katrina. That really helps. It was a game changer during COVID. There were a lot of families fed that would have gone hungry. Miranda, what is the question before the board?
So the question before the board is, do you adopt the proclamation that is in the packet? And we would be voting on if you're proclaiming June 11th to be Chris Current Day of Community Service.
Great. Come on up. I was hoping you would.
Hi, I'm Dennis Whalen. I chair the Board of Directors of the Nederland Food Pantry, and I chair Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services. In the unique time of COVID, with so many people out of work, with 1 in 3 struggling to eat and millions facing eviction, it was the Nederland Food Pantry and its connections to social services that helped keep our community stable. Providing food to heat, clothing, helping with rent, car repairs, utility bills, and the huge number of other unexpected bills and needs. This was all thanks to Chris Current and the food pantry, including the clothing which includes the clothing closet, the community gardens, and is the primary entry point for access to human services throughout much of the Peak-to-Peak region. At the height of COVID, the food pantry was providing help with food, clothing, and directly or indirectly expenses for more than 1,500 people every month. This is 3 times the number of people needing assistance prior to COVID. Chris's leadership and commitment to our community grew the food pantry to accommodate these increased needs. Even now, the food pantry is providing help for double the number of people needing assistance prior to COVID. COVID simply provides one example of Chris's work over the years to support everyone in our community. Chris, through her efforts over the years, have helped literally hundreds, if not thousands of households remain part of our community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dennis. I was wondering if 1,500 people is a lot of people. Board, do you have questions? Anything that?
Do you want to call for other public comment? Just
Yes, we might as
you're
well.
on it.
Okay. Other public comment? Do you see any?
Nope.
Okay, that's good. Board, do you have anything to add?
I mean, this is absolutely the least that we could do, I think, as a town and as a board for the work that Chris has done, not only over COVID, but over many years before that. So thank you so much, Chris, and very proud to be able to do this.
Okay, do we have a motion?
On that, I move that we proclaim June 11th, 2022 as the Chris Current Day of Community Service.
Second that.
Macy, call the vote.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Mahone.
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll read the proclamation declaring June 11th, 2022, this Saturday, as Chris Current Day of Community Service. Whereas Chris Current has served as the executive director of the Nederland Food Pantry for over 30 years, developing a cornerstone of social services throughout the Peak-to-Peak region. Whereas Chris Current has given exceptional dedication to feeding and caring for people in the Peak-to-Peak community through disasters, economic downturns, and pandemics. And whereas Chris Current has served as the Peak-to-Peak region served the region with distinction, treating residents and all who she encountered in the community with integrity and respect. Whereas Chris Kern has routinely placed the needs of the Peak-to-Peak region above her own. Now, therefore, I, Tom Mahold, Mayor Pro Tem of the town of Nederland, do hereby proclaim June 11th, 2022 as Chris Current Day of Community Service, and hope to see you on Saturday. Please come out and celebrate somebody really special.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And now we move on to 5.3.
We're just
Terry.
we're in the day of celebration. So tonight we have the oath of office for Police Officer Terrence Carroll, and we have Chief Fine Levin here. I'm hoping to say a few words about Terrence, and then Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, you will deliver the oath with Terrence. And Terrence, if you want to say anything, you're more than welcome to at the podium. All right, we'll let Chief Fine Levin do it. Do a few words to say about Terrence here. Please turn your mic on.
Stand up.
Oh, you can also stand up, but then you gotta come over here. Wherever you want to go. We do this party sitting down.
Do the bio?
If you want to read.
I don't
the
have,
bio.
yeah, I mean, make it big. Glasses are in the car. Let's see. All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
I will read a little bit about Terrence because he's so eclectic and professional that I don't want to leave anything out. But we're really happy to have him, and we recruited Terrence to come initially part-time because that's all he could give us, but he has agreed to come on full-time starting July 1. And now that I've said it on the record, it has to happen. And we're really excited and really lucky to have him. And I'm very sure he's gonna bring a lot to Nederland, and he's really excited to be part of this community. All right. Terrence, oh, thanks. All right. So Terrence was the 54th Speaker of the Colorado House of Representatives. He is the only African American to have served as Speaker of the Colorado House. Terrence served in the legislature from 2003 until being term limited in 2011. We do not have limits here. You can stay and work here as long as you want, Terrence. Terrence has been listed in 5280 magazine as one of the, the quote, 50 most influential people in Denver, end of quote. Terrence still works for Unite America, where his work is primarily focused on race and democracy. He began his law enforcement career with the University of Colorado Police Department in Boulder in 1993. And for the past 6 years, he served with the Colorado Rangers, which is the it's a state shared law enforcement reserve program. So he's been working for free in law enforcement. One of the things they have to do is pay for all of their own gear. And I think that runs them about $3,000. And it's a, true dedication. I'm almost done. I told you he's amazing. Terrence, additionally, Terrence has been listed as Power Book Industry Leader in Law by the Denver Business Journal. Yes, he also is an attorney. He serves on the board of directors for the National Western Stock Show and the Denver Area Council of the Boy Scouts of America. He is a graduate of the University of Denver's Sturm College of Law, Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and holds a Master of Divinity degree from the Iliff School of Theology in Denver. He also is an ordained minister in the American Baptist Churches USA and Progressive National Baptist Church. Yeah, so he started with us May 6th. Top that. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, do we administer the oath now?
Well, I don't know if the Board of Trustees has any questions or comments for Terrence.
I'd love to ask a question.
Go right ahead.
Officer Carroll, I was just wondering, what brings you to NED? What brings you to this community? What drives your interest in serving this particular community? And yeah, why are you here before us today?
The easy question is the chief. When she became chief, she talked to me a lot about what she's trying to do here in Nederland. And I've been in Nederland a lot with the Colorado Rangers, and I've really grown to really like the town of Nederland, and I like the mountains. And I started my law enforcement career down, as I learned, it's called the Flats. And this is a great opportunity to get back into the mountains. And most importantly, when I was a young kid, we had these two cops in my neighborhood in Washington, D.C. We called Starsky and Hutch, and they changed the perception for a lot of us of what police officers were like. Because in D.C., we would run for the cops just for the fun of it, because sometimes they weren't the best folks. And then some of my coaches in early my athletic career was at the Police Athletic League, and they got me started running track and playing football, mostly running track. So for me, it was very important. They set a role model for me. And then in this current environment, I think it's important for people of color to be engaged in law enforcement and to set an example in law enforcement, and for people who have a different vision of what policing should look like to be involved. If you don't like something, you might as well, you can't just say you don't like it. I think you have an obligation to get involved and to get your hands in there. And I like the frozen dead guy. Just kidding.
Thank you so much, Officer Carroll.
You're welcome.
I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Town Marshal Feinlevin, for convincing him to come join us.
Still early.
Fair enough. Okay, so now we go to public comment. We brought a cheering section.
Yeah, Officer Kyle came with a group. So.
Who's got something to say? Excellent. Thank you. And now?
Yes, if you'd like to administer the oath, and then please just grab the mic.
Okay.
When
Should I
you
come up?
Come up.
Good.
Do it front and center.
Probably won't see me in a tie and uniform after this.
Please raise your hand, Officer Carroll, and let's swear in. I, Terrence Carroll,
I, Terrence Carroll,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
that I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability perform the duties of the office of police officer
and I will faithfully and to the best of my abilities perform the duties of this office
of the town of Nederland.
of the town of Nederland.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
So watch yourselves on your way home, folks.
No, he's on duty. We originally hired Terrence to do parking and traffic,
Yep.
so y'all know. Y'all have been warned.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Okay. Now they've really been warned. I think dinner or something. We're hoping they're gonna have dinner or a cocktail or something.
And now we move to 5.4. Advisory board and commission appointments for the BZA. Did we bring a cheering section for that?
I don't know, Roger, did you bring a cheering section? Oh, no. And this is a complicated one, so let me
Yeah.
do my best
Say.
to explain it. So the Board of Zoning Adjustment is an appointed board that reviews zoning and variance requests. Currently, we have Roger Cornell, Billy Giblin, and Mark Stringfellow, whose terms will all end in June. Billy Giblin and Roger Cornell have both submitted their applications for reappointment. Mark Stringfellow has not. This board is already short 2. They're short because Mayor Pro Tem Mahold was a BZA member, now on the board. We're also short because when Karen Fletcher's term ended in June of 2021, no one came forward to apply for that alternate. So I just want to put that out there. Roger and Billy are both on the Planning Commission, and per Nederland Municipal Code, only one can serve as a board member. The other can serve as an alternate. Currently, Billy Giblin is that board member, and Roger Cornell is the alternate. Tonight, we are recommending that you appoint both, just because we are short. Originally, we were also asking for you to create a liaison position with one of you as a board member to create that 5th person. We did learn, though, that Andrew Bliss, who was originally an applicant for the Planning Commission, could no longer fulfill that obligation due to the date and time of the meeting. Asked him if he was interested in the BZA, and he is. So he is here. So the recommendation for you tonight would be to appoint Andrew Bliss as a regular board member for a 5-year term, to appoint either Roger or Billy to also a regular board position and the other as an alternate, and then to still identify a liaison so we can be a board of 6 so that if someone was absent, we could fill that vacancy. So that's what's before you tonight. How you want to unpackage this in terms of how you make motions, that's your choice. Historically, there was a desire to do like one person at a time and vote on them versus trying to decide as a group. Or you could decide, you just want to make a motion to handle all 4 of those pieces.
Okay.
And you've got some applicants here to speak.
Right.
You've got all 3 of them, and then a liaison. So if you want to let them have an opportunity to share why they're
I
interested.
do. Okay, so we'll go, the applications were in the packet, and Roger Cornell is first on the list. Roger, do you want to say a few words?
Introduce myself. Roger Cornell, 998 Peak to Peak Highway. Nothing really to say. I would like to be the alternate. I see no reason to change it. Billy's, I would say he's actually not new anymore, but compared to some people, he's actually new on the job. So yes, I think it's worked very well, and I think that we should just continue it. So thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
If
I got,
you have questions, I guess.
yeah, does anybody have any questions? I really felt like I was ripped off. I came for 2 years and we got to adjudicate nothing.
Until you were off. Then we got 3.
Yeah,
So we
I
just
was here for
waited.
that too. Yeah. Go ahead.
Miranda, since Karen's term ended in 2021, June, will her replacement have a 4-year term instead of a 5-year?
So alternates are only 2 years, but still none of the applicants who are before you replaced Karen Fletcher. We would still have that as a vacancy.
So the person that replaced,
The person who would serve as alternate would technically replace Roger unless it's Roger.
okay, so we're talking
Yeah.
we're talking an alternate and 2 board members.
2 board members. Yeah. And the board members fulfill Mark Stringfellow's vacancy and the vacancy that was created by Mayor Pro Tem Mahold when he moved to the Board of Trustees.
And the board positions are 5 years and the alternate is 2 years. And we still have Karen's seat open.
Yep. Which is why we're asking for a liaison from the Board of Trustees, because you cannot do a variance hearing without at least 5 members. And it gets a little risky if you only have 5.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to Billy Giblin?
Chris Rivera, I live on Bridge right next door. I'm an applicant for the Planning Commission.
Mhm.
And one of the things that Billy and I were talking, he was recommending, I applied just for the Planning Commission, and I know there's a limited amount of seats for that. I didn't apply for the Board of Zoning, but I don't know if there's any consideration if you do still have an open seat and you want to open it up to other people applying for other boards, then something to consider, that's all.
So your only cautionary tale is that if Christopher Rivera ends up on the Planning Commission, he cannot serve on the Board of Zoning Adjustment if you also appoint Billy Giblin and Roger Cornell. But if that doesn't work out, then fair game. So
Wow,
complexities here.
we should diagram this.
Yes, I probably should have diagrammed it. It was like hard to write out. I was like, what's
Yeah.
happening here? So
Billy, do you have, I know you'll have a few words to say.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time tonight. Yeah, I'd like to be reappointed to the BZA. It's been, unfortunately, Tom, it was kind of quiet. I had only done one thing prior to you coming on, and then we got to do 3 last month after you switched to the Board of Trustees. But so it's been kind of quiet on the front, but it's a good place to be, good learning, just the process and entering the government. And, you know, I got into it in 2018 and have learned a lot for as little as we met from Mark Stringfellow, Mark Mull, Deb and Cynthia and Miranda and Karen before that, and Roger, of course. And so I appreciate being reappointed last month. When we were there, it was Mark Mull was in charge of the meeting, and you know, because we don't meet much, you get kind of rusty. You kind of forget what's what. So it was kind of nice to have, you know, Roger and I, who kind of at least get to do this kind of thing a little more like monthly with Planning Commission there, as well as Julian to kind of, you know, just kind of coach along and how things would go. And Mark and Deb have tons of experience. They've been doing it longer, but I appreciate being there. And I just implore people listening who already, most of whom do things for the town already, but if others would step up to fill the, you know, those 2 alternates, the other alternate and the other seat, that would be great. Or, you know, if someone doesn't go to the Planning Commission, hopefully they'll choose to. And the other thing the other comment, I will wait till the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Just about alternates. But thanks for your time. Any questions or answers?
Well, hopefully, I guess it's like the Maytag repairman, Billy. We wait a long time for something to happen.
Yeah. And
but Cynthia is doing a good job of setting expectations, and I think that makes
the town staff and things that have changed with code, you know, that Roger and a lot of people were part of along the way have almost made the BZA obsolete.
Yeah.
But occasionally they come in handy. So
yeah. Occasionally we have meetings like we did in May.
Yeah.
Thanks, Billy, for your service.
Thank you.
Okay. This
you also have Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew, come on up.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Andrew Bliss, Nederland resident. Love this town, raising our boys here, and want to do whatever we can to help it be the great place that we love. And so originally applied to serve on the Planning Commission. I'm really interested in community engagement and wanted to add some community engagement experience to the Planning Commission and as part of the comp plan process. But I serve on the Library Board of Trustees, which has a meeting time at the same time the Planning Commission. But I'm very happy that Miranda suggested this opportunity because just would love to help out and would be interested in listening to the community with their concerns, whatever comes in front of the committee, listening to staff recommendations, and try to make the best decisions that serve the town now and into the future.
Thanks very much. Is anybody before Andrew steps back, any questions? Great. It's good seeing you again. Please.
So Andrew, for those of you who know Karen and probably you guys on the BOT, he's pretty, if you ever read one of his public comments, super diplomatic, super kind, super open to both sides. I just think him being part of, I saw him a month ago when you guys did the forum there at the library, and I said, you gotta, you know, it's not like I'm responsible, but he's just would be great. So I hope he does more and more with the town government.
I agree. I agree with you completely.
Can I make some comments?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I've worked both with Roger and Billy for the last 2 years on the Planning Commission. I highly recommend both of them. They're very involved. They do their homework. They help us make good decisions. And I also know Andrew. Just kind of socially, he recently joined the RTD EcoPass Advisory Board, which I'm on, and he's on the library and doing this. And he's always out there helping in the community, a really nice person to see when you're walking around. So unless anyone has anything else to say.
Well, it's an action item, right? So
You want to call
Public
for
comment.
public comment? Yeah. I know there's been a little sprinkled, but
Right. Any other public comment? Okay. The question before the board is, does the BOT approve reappointing Cornell and Giblin to the BZA? If so, which one will serve as board member or alternate? Second question we're going to have to resolve is, does the BOT approve Andrew Bliss to serve on the board with the term ending in June 1, 2027, Andrew?
I asked him if he was here for the long haul. He said he was.
I'd like to make a motion that Billy Giblin and Andrew Bliss be appointed to serve as board members and that Roger Cornell be appointed as an alternate.
Second.
Great. Macy, can you call the vote?
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
and Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Congratulations to each of you, and thanks for your service.
Thanks so much for serving.
And with that, we move to 5.5.
Actually, you'll need to discuss the
Okay.
BOT liaison, please.
Oh,
The
yes.
BOT liaison to the BZA, whoever wants to take on another one.
When are the meetings?
They meet
scheduled?
quarterly, so every quarter on the second Thursday at 7 o'clock. Pretty rare. The BZA reads it's like once a year, and oftentimes we'll have to call meetings outside of the quarter because we're not necessarily going to make an applicant wait 90 days.
It's
So
about the lightest one you'll take.
you could expect to meet like 1 to 2 times a year.
It was more the date and time.
It's 7 o'clock, second
Thursday.
Thursday. But again, this last
a quarter.
BZA meeting was like on a Wednesday. So,
I will motion to make myself the liaison.
oh,
I'll second.
I'll
Great.
third that.
Do we need to vote on this?
Yes.
We do. Macy, call the vote.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes. Thank you so much, Trustee Baumhofer.
Yes. Now we can move on to 5.4.
so I'm actually hoping we can go to 5.5 and do SAB because Michael Dye is hoping to try to make it if we can delay a little bit.
Okay, good.
So I'll do the Sustainability Advisory Board appointment. Sorry, Billy and Roger, you have to hang out a little longer. So the Sustainability Advisory Board focuses on issues of sustainability, conservation, renewable energy, and throughout town. These are 3-year terms. This month, Melody Baumhover and Hunter Wright's terms end. Baumhover did submit her application for reappointment, but Wright has decided not to continue. Baumhover does currently serve as the co-chair of SAB. In addition to those 2 vacancies, Patricia Dowd has submitted her resignation from SAB, which creates a third vacancy. You have 2 applications that were submitted. So Melody Baumhover and Christopher Larson submitted an application. And then I spoke with Alan Apt, who was appointed to be an alternate in May, but he is interested in being a regular board member. If that was approved, it would create a vacancy for an alternate that we would continue to look for filling. But that would, if you appointed all 3 to regular positions, it would create a whole board of 7.
Wow. A whole board of 7. Okay, that's great. Go ahead, please.
Miranda, what is the term end date for Patricia's seat?
Patricia's seat, good question. Let me look it up really quick. I don't know off the top of my head.
The SAP members serve 3-year terms, but
They
if she was
do.
partially through her 3rd year.
And she had just started. She'd only been on the board for a couple months.
Okay.
So let me pull it up. So she was set. Oh, I don't have it. If you'll give me a moment, I can
Okay.
find that.
So I'm kind of assuming that we'll have 2-3 terms, and the one replacing Patricia will be we'll have 2 3-year terms, and then the one replacing Patricia may be less than 3 years.
Her term ends in 2 years. Yes, June 1st, 2024 would be the term. So that person would fulfill a 2-year term, whoever you appointed to that seat. Thank you for asking.
Okay,
Trustee Whitmore.
so I guess I'd want to ask the applicants when they speak, who would like to take the 2-year term?
I know that you have Christopher Larson on and Melody Baumhover on line, but Trustee App was not going to be able to make it tonight, so he won't be able to answer that. Yeah, or do you want the applicants to share why they're interested? Who do you want to start with? You got them both.
Are you there, Melody?
Yes, I am here. Can you guys hear me and see me?
We do. We hear you at least.
All right. So I am Melody Baumhover. I have been on the Sustainability Advisory Board for quite some time now. Not yet a decade, but almost there. And seeing that there is not another applicant that wants to take my place, I'm happy to continue serving for another 2 years or 3 years, whatever you guys decide.
Do you have a preference for a 2-year or a full term?
No preference.
Okay. Christopher Larson, are you on?
Yes, indeed. Evening, trustees. I think you guys know who I am. Just, been away for a month and a half now and want to get back in and helping out this town in any way I can. I think some of the great things we did in the last 6-8 years was related to sustainability. Most of the great things we did, particularly signing the Paris Climate Accord. And I know one of the things I pushed for was a very aggressive electrification goal on the renewable side. So I want to now step up, start working with SAB. I found that I didn't have the time to really work on that as mayor. So now that I'm not, I want to help get that project across the finish line. So thanks for considering me. And as for the 2 or 3 year, I will take either one. I have a preference probably for the 3 year because that gets us to the 2025 where we intend to have 100% renewable.
All right. Thank you. Delighted. Is there anybody else who's on who wants to talk about about SAB or about the candidates that have put themselves forward? Any other public comment that you're seeing? Okay, then can we go to a motion?
Well, I'm thinking I'll make a motion to appoint Melody.
You may have public comment. Hold on. There's a call-in user. So I just want to confirm that. And I don't know, Kathleen Chipai, I know she had emailed a bit about this in her comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's her though. Okay. Sorry, Trustee Blakemore, you can continue.
Well, I move to appoint Melody Baumhover to the 2-year term, Alan Apt to the 3-year term, Christopher Larson to the 3-year term on the SAB board.
Any questions before or a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Any further questions before we go to a vote?
Was there a second? Did I miss
I
you?
did.
That was you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Macy, let's call the vote.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thanks to each of you for your service. My short time working with SAB or interaction with SAB has been fun. And Chris and Melody, you're on the hook. We got some aggressive goals.
Looking forward to working with you guys on them.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you all.
Okay. Okay, Miranda, we'll go back to 5.5.
Yes, 5.4. I don't know what number. I don't have the numbers in front of me. You're
Okay,
throwing me off. Okay,
fi-
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
Do the Planning Commission. All right, Planning Commission. Planning Commission is an appointed board which reviews documents and land use code specific to land use and zoning. These individuals must be Nederland residents and they serve for 4-year terms. As of this month, Roger Cornell, Jim Reese, and Chris Perret's terms all end. Roger Cornell and Jim Reese have submitted their applications for reappointment, but Chris Perret has moved outside of town limits and therefore can no longer serve. So those are 3 vacancies from their terms ending, as well as Trustee Blakemore created a vacancy when she moved to the Board of Trustees. So we currently have 4 vacancies on the Planning Commission. Originally, we had 5 applications that were all submitted by the due date of May 25th. As you know, Andrew Bliss did withdraw his application. Timothy Duggan did submit one on June 3rd. So while it was past the deadline, we did include it in the packet. But you still have 5 applications for 4 vacancies. And you do, I believe you have all the, and maybe Mike Dye is on the phone, but you potentially have all the applicants here tonight to speak.
Right.
Mike Dye did email you a comment just in case he could not be here that he'd like for you to consider. So I don't know who you want to start with.
Yeah, I think I will. Let's start with Roger Cornell, who's at the top of the list.
It was Andrew, but he's no longer an applicant. Tim Duggan's application, it's still in the packet for the board's consideration, but it was submitted after the application due date.
Roger Cornell, 998 Peak to Peak Highway. I'm not at a loss of words, just taking, I guess I was just trying to think of very briefly what I should say. I guess I've been here since 1986 is when I first was on the Planning Commission. And I've served on the Planning Commission continuously, except for, I believe, 95 through 2000. So 5 years I took a break. And I found, just thinking about this and coming to the meeting tonight, that, why would I do this? But after doing, as a Board of Trustee member, when we first did this, trustee actually I was actually serving as interim mayor, not unlike what you're doing now. And at that time, the mayor was on Planning Commission. We had a Water and Sewer Committee and the Board of Trustees. There was times where I went to 4 meetings a night, plus I had my 2 small children. So I felt like I'm almost in retirement going into Planning Commission. And it was a lot more work when I was chair, but now Steve has taken over and done a wonderful job. Steve Williams, excuse me. So I actually kind of feel semi-retired, just being a, planning commissioner, once a month meeting. So, I'm just so much connected to this community since 1980. I can't look around. I've just done, it's just so much into it. I don't want to do eye trouble, but standing in this room, this is my project on the ceiling. I've done floor tiles back in the kitchen there. I installed the chairs down in the auditorium. I've done the dance studio, anyhow. So when I come to this building, it's actually like walked into kind of part of my home. So it's very easy to continue. And I hope that I can. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your service, Roger. And thanks for keeping the group together the other night. Timothy, was Roger spoken? Is Timothy Duggan on the line?
He's online.
Yep, I'm right here if you can hear me.
We do.
Good. So yeah, just real quick, Timmy Duggan here at 163 Conger. I served on the Planning Commission for 4 years from 2014 through 17. I was actually hoping to be on the Board of Trustees in 2018, but because of some family health issues, I had to kind of step out of town politics for a little bit. But things are under control now, and I want to get back to being more involved in my community. And additionally, I'm in real estate professionally, so I do a lot of business in the Netherland and Mountain area, and that's absolutely my passion in the real estate business is our community up here in the mountains and the uniqueness that comes with it. So I definitely think I can add some value to the planning commission from that respect.
Thanks so much, Timmy. Appreciate it. Go ahead. Trustee Blakemore has a question for you.
I have an interview question for for Timmy, Michael, and Christopher to help me kind of understand or get a better feeling for those three applicants. So the question involves the subcommittees that are currently operating in the Planning Commission. One is developing regulations for livestock. That is for livestock that we currently don't have regulations for. Regulations for chickens, horses, and llamas, but no other livestock. The second subcommittee is working on an ordinance to make it easier for residents and businesses and the town to install solar. So removing barriers, and the barriers are related to height, lot coverage, and setbacks. And the third subcommittee is looking at parking in the First Street corridor of the Central Business District. Basically, the problem there is that we don't have any off-street parking, yet our municipal code requires businesses to have parking for their customers and employees. So if those three committees are staffed right now, but suppose you were coming onto the Planning Commission, which subcommittee would you be most interested in serving on, and why, and how would you approach the problem? What steps would you take if to develop the regulations?
That's to you, Timmy.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Yeah, I I was involved in the parking conversation 4+ years ago on the commission. So for that and the other two subcommittees, I think they're very valid topics that we can improve the town's stance with our code and everything on those items. I personally am fairly neutral, I guess, in all of them, but I definitely think that the town's stance on those three things can be improved and heard from the community and discussed and improved. But to answer the question, the one I would be most interested in probably would be the parking. I would look to other towns of similar size and just sort of style and vibe. Maybe within Colorado, but throughout the West and even in places like Europe. I lived in Europe for many years, and there's definitely a lot more prevalence of sort of small villages, if you will, like Netherlands and how they approach the parking issue. So I would take those things into account as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay.
Karen, did you want to address it to Rod? Did you want Roger to speak to that too? Okay.
I feel that, Roger, I know, and Jim Reese from working on the Planning Commission, Roger is just such a great person to have there because you have all the history and you know the municipal code inside and out, and he does a great job of chairing the meetings when he was chair, and Jim, I know too, so only the three new people.
Okay. Michael Dye, you want to go next?
Yeah, hello. I'm afraid I joined just as the question was being phrased. Um, I hate to ask this, but would you mind restating the question?
Sure.
Thank you
No,
so
not at all. So currently in the Planning Commission, there's 3 subcommittees that are working on regulations. And one is for livestock, one for solar, and one for parking. In the livestock subcommittee, um, uh, they're developing regulations for livestock other than horses, llamas, and chickens, which we already have regulations for. For the solar subcommittee, they're working on removing barriers for solar installation, and these barriers are related to height, lot coverage, and setbacks. The parking issue involves the First Street corridor in the Central Business District. Currently, our municipal code requires each business to have a certain amount of off-street parking for their customers and their employees. And if they do not have that parking, then they pay into the parking fund. The problem is that part of the town, that business area was built so long ago, there's no parking available other than some lots that are currently not being used for buildings, and the owner is using that for parking. So those are the 3 subcommittees, and I'm wondering if you were on the Planning Commission when these subcommittees were formed, which one you would be most interested in serving on, and how would you approach developing the regulations? What steps would you take?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think they're all very interesting issues. The livestock one seems perhaps less complex in a sense that perhaps easier to resolve than the solar and parking. Although for those that it impacts, be it the people that want to have livestock or goats, I'm told is a current area of interest, and the people that might be impacted by their neighbors having goats. That's important to take into account as well. I think the area that I'd be most interested in is solar.
Great.
I know there's a lot of expertise in the area, both in the Greater Boulder area, but also in Nederland, of individuals working fully with solar. I think it would be wonderful to perhaps apply for some grants, other federal or state level grants, to try to make it easier for people to get solar panels on their home. I know one of the big barriers for that is that the current batteries, if people wanted to install those along with solar, don't really function very well in the cold and especially at altitude, given their oxygen requirements. But to have it feeding back into the grid is, of course, another solution. That could also kind of go hand in hand with wildfire mitigation. So I live in Old Town, and unfortunately, there are a lot of the trees that are so close to my own property that really aren't wildfire friendly. That knock on wood, hopefully it would never happen that Old Town would be impacted by a fire, but the trees would be a bad thing to have around the property, and that's also an impediment to having solar on my house, and I know that's the case for a lot of other houses. So maybe that could be taken hand in hand, the installation of solar panels with some wildfire mitigation, and perhaps some funding could come in that way.
Right.
Um,
Mike, let's step back a notch. We kind of went backwards and hit you with questions before you introduced yourself. And
yeah. Yeah, of course. So, so my name is Mike Dye. I grew up in Boulder, spent most of my life in the Boulder area. Moved up to Gilpin County in 2000 and then spent about a year in Boulder, and Boulder was no longer for me at that point. And since 2008, I've been living in Nederland, first over by 3rd Street, and now I'm over on Spring Street. When since I was a little kid, I remember driving through Nederland, like up to the Indian Peaks Wilderness, and just establishing a really deep connection with the woods and the streams and the mountains there. It does and always will hold a very special place in my heart, and the nature was what first brought me here, along with the quirky and special nature of Nederland, and the really tight community that we have. I've been here through, unfortunately, first one fire, then the other, and as well as the floods, and it blows me away how people come together. The community is why I'm here. I'm blessed with wonderful neighbors and great relationships and wonderful people throughout town. So professionally, I'm a software engineer, been working in that area in various capacities for over 20 years. I've worked a lot with the National Center for Atmospheric Research, have a deep interest in climate science, but I've also worked in areas of volcanology, a little bit in the film industry. I also like building things. Aside from kind of DIY projects around the house, I'm a handyman. And I also have a passion for Tai Chi, which my apologies for being late tonight. I was teaching a Tai Chi class. I think the heart of Nederland is its people and our relationships. And from what I've seen online and through attending some of the meetings, our relationships have been strained for various reasons for the last several years, increasingly, and I think that's a tragedy, and that's a big reason why I'm here, not out of the tragedy, but out of a desire to do something to help Nederland evolve. Change is inevitable, but I want it to retain its character and its community and these close relationships as we move into the future, if that doesn't sound too canned and cliched.
Not at all. Not at all. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mike, and giving us a little background on who you are, what brings you here, and
absolutely,
and answering questions. Does anybody want to address any more questions to Mike while he's here from the board, from the public? Miranda, Macy, you seeing anything? Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there any further questions? And did I address the livestock, solar, and parking issues?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Jim Reese, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Good. Introduce yourself, please, Jim.
My name is Jim Reese. I live at 66 Barker Road, Nederland, Colorado. I have been on the planning, lived here in Nederland since 2010. We moved to Nederland because my wife took the job as town manager back then. And I have been on the Planning Commission for the last 4 years. I currently serve as the vice chairman. I have missed one meeting in those 4 years. I take this job pretty seriously, and I always come prepared for the meetings. I study the code, and I've been a part of 2 subcommittees. I was on the marijuana subcommittee, and I'm currently on the parking subcommittee. I believe that you would hear from the other members of the Planning Commission and from Miranda that, I don't ever show up unprepared, and come late to meetings. I want to do my part to continue serving the town if you will accept me for another term on the Planning Commission. Thank you. I'll take any questions you have.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody on the board have any questions for Jim? I think everybody's known and worked with Jim, and you do come prepared, and we appreciate it a lot. Anybody else? From the public, are you seeing anything, Miranda? We're good? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
One thing I should have noted in the aim is that Jim Reese does currently serve as the vice chair of the planning commission.
Right. Um, Christopher Rivera, it's your turn.
Everyone, Chris Rivera, 502 North Birch Street. Moved to Colorado about 10 years ago and been coming to Ned since. Lived in Boulder for a number of years, and then my family, my wife and I moved to Austin, Texas for 5 years, close to be close to her family in Houston, Texas. 2 years ago, moved to Ned. I was fortunate enough to be neighbors with Linda Glasser, who quickly got to know a lot about the town, a lot about people. Was fortunate enough to meet Chris Larson, Trustee Blakemore, became friends with Billy as well. And about 5 months ago, I had a daughter, and all of that, also seeing kind of the dynamics of the town, everything going on Ned Heads, the push and pull between, Eldora, balancing the town's history, the character, modernization, tours, visitors and everything. I found it a very challenging and interesting thing to kind of balance the needs of the town and the people. Keeping the old, keeping the character. I think it's very important. Personally, I've been working in software development for 15 years. I'm a vice president of product and engineering, manage all the developers at our software company. Very involved in project planning, dealing with developing out ideas and projects. This would be my first time getting involved in local politics, but I've always been passionate about politics, very interested, like to research, make sure I understand all issues at hand, try to come up and also good questions to be able to ask both other members, people bringing their ideas, and the public as well. As for the 3 questions that you brought up, Trustee Blakemore, I find them all very interesting. As far as the livestock goes, I think when I was a kid, my dad was in the Navy. We lived in Okinawa, Japan for 3 years, and you very much see livestock living in cities in close proximity. People, whether they're farming, doing agriculture, or just trying to create new products. I like the entrepreneurial idea of people having things in our town. But I think it's very important that there's a balance between public health and the health of the animals. So we definitely have to look at what are the animals, what's the property size, how are they taken care of, and maybe get some public opinion about certain livestock types is probably important, or even proximity in city limits versus outer, a little bit further out, and again, property size is I think a big important part of that. Solar panels, I think, is absolutely necessary. Sustainability, renewable energy, being able to give back to the grid. It's also a very good opportunity to cut down on brush and fire mitigation. I think the big challenge is, especially with my experience living in Austin, seeing HOAs, seeing the sort of process of people wanting to kind of control what people have in their yards. I've always loved the fact that Nederland, every house is different, especially Old Town. There's character, it's free form. People add on and do, whatever they want. So I think setback is probably the best way to handle that. Also, some sort of, engineering guidelines. Not necessarily standing up towers with, large solar installations that are going to block sunlight or, overhang other people's views and their neighbors. I think that'd probably be an important aspect to keep in consider. And then as far as parking goes, downtown is still keeping its character. I would hate to see it just paved over and create a bunch of parking spaces, but we need something, obviously. So, for that, I think getting the public's opinion on that, looking at what balance is there to be able to modernize while keeping character, keeping its, style is important, I think. And sometimes doing less is more. It's not exactly solving a problem, but it also is keeping the town what it is, you know, so it's a challenging one. I'd be interested on being on all three if possible. Just I think they bring unique challenges. It's very interesting. So those are my answers. Any questions?
Yeah, that answers the question. I bet the Planning Commission would love to have someone who wanted to be on all three. Go to all the meetings. Thank you.
Colleagues, anything that you'd like to ask? Okay. Tanya, we keep forgetting about you. Did you have any question you'd like to bring in for Christopher Rivera?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thanks, guys. Thanks all. I'm Billy Giblin, 196 South Tilden Street, Old Town. Just want to say it's been a pleasure, and I've learned a lot working with Roger and Jim, and on subcommittees now. We're doing the livestock. Roger and I, Jim and I had done the marijuana with Julian and worked together. It was fun to do that, and it's been great to work on the committee together. And Jim and April led the committee meeting because Steve was out of town. Did a great job. And Mike is a neighbor of mine, Mike Dye. And he has attended a lot in the years. In years I've been doing this, he's been like I've seen he's showed up to a lot, a fair amount of planning commission meetings, given public comments written or verbally, and always respectful and kind, and he's just a great guy. And he's also smart and good problem solver and would work well with people. I think he'd be great. And Chris, I've gotten to know, he's also a great guy and definitely is interested to do more here. And I think he'd be a good addition. I don't know Timmy. I want to bring up one thing that Jonathan has actually, let's see, 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and then 2 years ago, I'd gone for the planning commission back when Stephanie and Linda were getting appointed, and and went with them because of their experience. It made sense, and we talked about a possibility for an alternate in the PC. And then when I did, or Karen or someone, it came up again. Maybe it was last year, where the PC was kind of more people were running than there were seats, and the BOT's been super busy. It's not like this is a high priority, but it does seem like, knowing that the BZA has 2 alternates, SAB has alternates, like the planning commission, even though there's 7 people, an alternate, people are gone sometimes, and like it's a great place to learn. So an alternate, when you can line it up on your docket, an alternate for the PC would be huge. I think it'd be real helpful too. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. Roger?
Roger Cornell, 998 Peak to Peak Highway. Now, the question is not really of an alternate. What we did was, because of the ruling and the quasi judicial things, that the trustee could not go to, half the meetings or even more. So that's when we expanded to more citizens. So we added 1, so that when the trustee was there, we would still have 7. So that was really wasn't the alternate. That was how we handled that. So very briefly too, I know there's 5 and you have to choose 4. I would be remiss to not to mention Tim Duggan. When he was, I probably, between my work at the university and working for the town for these years and being all these things, I don't know, I've probably worked with 1,000 people. And Tim Duggan is one that actually sticks out and always came prepared, knowledgeable. I know, Jonathan, you will always say that we ought to add new blood. So I think here's an opportunity to actually add new blood, but also to keep some of the old blood. But I would be wrong not to say that Tim Duggan was really an outstanding commissioner when he was on the board. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger.
So I did have to meet a call-in user. So if you're doing public comment, I just want to remind the call-in user *6 if they have a desire to give public comment.
Not hearing.
Not hearing any?
I would like to make a motion, and thanks to everybody for stepping up and applying. Always nice to have more applicants than positions available, because that means we've got people in the community who are willing to help up and willing to step up when we need them next time. But I would move to appoint Roger Cornell, Michael Dye, Jim Reese, and Christopher Rivera to the Planning Commission.
Second. In terms of process, Miranda, before we go further, how do we want to do? We've got more candidates than positions.
Right, so you could run it as a slate like that, or you could choose to vote one at a time. Depends on the preference of the board.
I prefer one at a time.
There is a motion on the table though, so Trustee Coombs Ismail will either need to withdraw that motion or there's a second and you take that vote.
I can second Eric's. This is Tanya.
And I'm sorry, will you repeat who it was?
I move to appoint Roger Cornell, Michael Dye, Jim Reese, and Christopher Rivera.
So you'll want to have Macy call the vote unless there's a desire for deliberation.
Right. Does anybody else have questions or comment or second?
Well,
We have a second, I'm sorry.
so we can have some discussion now, right? Because
Yeah.
we had a motion, we had a second. So Christopher did mention that he was willing to take a BCA position. And we have 2 alternates available at BCA. I'm really confused. There's so many openings.
Yeah, so you have one alternate position now with your BOT liaison. There's one alternate available.
One alternate.
Yeah.
And I know that Timothy Dugan, I did we did some work at a local park with him. He organized it, and we went and cleaned up the park and repaired the trail. And so I know him from that. And his wife was my son's ski coach. So I kind of know them quite well. And as far as the answers to my questions, I really liked the depth of Timothy's and Michael Dye's answers. I mean, Christopher had great answers too, but so that's all.
Okay.
Would you take a friendly amendment to this motion?
Depends on what it is.
I would like to also appoint Roger Cornell, Jim Reese, Michael Dye, and I would like that be the friendly amendment, and then the last position to deliberate between the other 2 individually.
So to eliminate one from the slate that I just put out there.
Correct.
Could you repeat the 3?
It would be Roger Cornell, Jim Reese, and Michael Dye.
So I will say that I think my motion is based on both the timeliness and the completeness of the applications. I think that they are the most complete, most timely, and most impressive applications. So I kind of want to do the 4 that I just said. And I think because Tanya seconded it, I'd rather it just go to a vote.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is Tanya. I want to add that my only rationale, because I think everybody here is incredibly qualified, fantastic community members, and thank everybody for stepping up. Strictly based on time of application and that one was turned in and passed the deadline. That's the only criteria I'm having here. And I feel like it's a good way for me to clarify it, since I don't have any other reasons to want to vote yes or no. I like everybody. I want everybody. So that's my only reasoning, and I'm sticking with my second on this.
I am swayed.
Good. Okay. Is there, I guess we're ready to go to a vote then. We've got a first, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Macy, can you call the vote?
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
and Trustee Baumhover.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Timmy, we have a special election coming up.
Exactly.
I was going to say the same thing. This is Tanya.
And that goes for all of you.
I'll second that. Did we vote?
Thanks all. Good night, Roger. Okay, that takes us through 5.5 Planning Commission. Now we're going to go to 5.7.
Could I request a 5-minute recess break?
6.
Okay. We have to motion for that?
No.
Okay.
You can just take it.
People back in about 40 past.
Chris, yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to jump on later, huh? No, I already weighed in on the PC, so I'll jump back in. But I'll probably just listen in. I will. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we're back and we're good to go.
We want to just confirm Trustee Corvalon is
Okay.
back. Yeah, Attorney Madsen is online. We saved her the drive. She'll be here on the 21st, I believe.
Great.
Trustee Corvalon, are you there? Because if so, we'll get started.
Yes, I am.
Beautiful. Okay. We're back in session at a little bit before 8:40. And the next item we're going to be looking at is an SRU for Cassidy Ortiz, a retail marijuana cultivation. SRU, Miranda, please set the table.
So you have the script. Do you have your script? You'll want to read your script to get us started. We're going to need to get you a binder.
Here it is.
You should have two scripts, one for SRU and then one for the marijuana hearing.
Yeah. So this is the one that's titled for quasi judicial hearing?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on a special review application pursuant to Article 3, Chapter 16 of the Nederland Municipal Code. Before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to provide an outline of the process for the public hearing so that everyone knows what to expect. The hearing will start with staff presentations, or staff presenting the report on this SRU. The Board of Trustees will then have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions of the staff after the presentation. The applicant will then present the application and the Board of Trustees will be able to ask their clarifying questions. We'll then open it up for public comment. The applicant will may be permitted to respond to public comment. Then the Board of Trustees will discuss and deliberate the application. The public hearing is now open for the purpose of considering special review use application related to an application for an operation of a marijuana cultivation facility at 258 East 5th Street in the general commercial zone district. Will Miranda Fisher, Town Administrator, please present the report?
Yes. So tonight before you have a consideration of a special review use related to marijuana cultivation at 258 East 5th Street. The representatives of the Bakery Brother LLC are currently under contract to lease that property following the transfer of ownership. This is located within the general commercial zone, which requires a special review use for approval of marijuana cultivation. Historically, this general commercial did allow cultivation as use by right, but recently it was changed to special review use, which is why this is before you. But this building itself was built for cultivation by the Johnson brothers. That was their intention for this site, and they did so when this was used by right. Obviously, what you have before you is also a marijuana licensing hearing because they cannot operate this without the marijuana license, which they would need to receive approval for. There were historically two cultivation industries in Nederland, but the Flower Collective recently moved their industry, their cultivation site outside. And the Harvest House, while they do have an active cultivation license, they are not actively cultivating in the building that's behind their retail store. So this would be the only active cultivation site in town. There are no limitations in our new ordinance about how many cultivation sites, but rather there is a limitation on how far between marijuana businesses, similar businesses it can be, which is 500 feet. And this business is more than 500 feet from the Harvest House. A couple other things. This is, because it's in general commercial, it is mixed with a series of low density and mountain residential homes, as well as other commercial businesses that are to the east. We did have a planning commission hearing where some neighbors came out and had expressed some concerns, and the applicant spoke to those and also provided a narrative, and it's in the packet, narrative additional information that speaks to things like exterior motion lighting, safety, water usage, byproduct, and odor. One thing that comes with, because this is kind of an industrial wholesale manufacturing business, there is no set parking count. What the code says is in your SRU, you can recommend a set number of off-street parking spaces. The Planning Commission did recommend 4, and as staff, we are fine with that, and the applicants did say that they could accommodate that on site. All in all, as town staff, we had no concerns. The building's already serviced by utilities, and we do recommend approving this application. And then we do have the applicants here to speak further.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so Miranda, thanks for laying that out. Any questions from the Board of Trustees? They should be clarification questions at this point on what Miranda just presented.
I have a clarifying question for Miranda. I'm a little bit confused about the parking requirements because I look at the property description that probably came with the when it was for sale, and it says there's 6 parking spaces, and then the applicant said they'll just have 2 to 3 cars there, and then the Planning Commission wants them to have 4. So I'm wondering why the Planning Commission wants 4.
That was just the number that they agreed upon, feeling like depending on, they only anticipate of having a handful of employees, so hence the 2 to 3 cars, where the 4th car would allow for additional vendors or other people to come. You could, of course, amend that if you wanted, but the Planning Commission felt like 4 off-street parking spaces as required would satisfy the business type.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is the applicant or his or her representative present tonight? Can you please come up and state your name?
Hello, board, and thank you for having us here. My name is Cassidy Ortiz. This is my brother, Jason Villalobos. Our business is going to be known as the Bakery Brothers. Again, we're very thankful and we appreciate you having us here before you.
Excellent.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything to the staff report that was just presented? Anything was left out?
I don't believe anything was left out. You know, most importantly, my brother and I are just really excited to be a part of this community. You know, I've met with a couple of you and, you know, we went through the Planning Commission as well. And just to be able to have the opportunity to be a part of a community like Nederland. I've been in Colorado since 1997 and I have uncles and family up in Fort Collins since the 70s. And this really is a gem of a location. It's, you know, people come here for lots of different reasons. It's just a great place. When we look at our location up at 250 80s 5th and we see where we might be working for the next 20 years of our lives, it's really incredible. You know, this town, the people we've met, you know, walking around, just going to the businesses, trying to introduce ourselves, letting people know what we're trying to do here. You know, people have just been very kind to us. And you know, I have 4 children and, you know, I currently live in Parker, Colorado, and I cannot wait to get out of there and to move to a community like this. You know, I've lived in downtown Denver in what is called the Baker neighborhood. It's been built since the 1890s. I owned a house there for about 17 years and was fortunate enough about a year ago this month to sell that home in order to pursue my brother's and my dream of owning our own marijuana cultivation here in Colorado. And when we were able to find this building here in Nederland, we were amazed. Unfortunately for the Johnson brothers, they couldn't finish a project they started over 6 years ago. I know we're happy to be able to take it off their hands and again, to be just a good, friendly neighbor, you know, conscientious neighbor, and just hopefully, you know, sooner than later to be a part of your community.
Terrific. There was a lot of paper in the packet, and I'm sure everybody read everything tonight, but I'd say now let's open it up. Can we open it up to questions? I still see for sale signs over there tonight. Are you guys going to own the property or lease the property?
Yes, I'm going to be 15% owner of the building. We close on June 24th. It's a day after my 50th birthday. So I'm very excited. We were supposed to close on June 23rd, which would have been very serendipitous of closing on my birthday. But we close on June 24th. But right now we're under contract. Again, I'll be 15% owner of the building.
Great.
2 other gentlemen who are going to, that are good people, they were willing to help us find a building. This is the building we found, and they're going to own 85%. I'll own 15%. On top of that, we signed a 10-year lease. My brothers and my goal is to hopefully be able to do well enough that we can actually buy the building ourselves within 3 years.
Good.
Because we would love, again, to be, roots in and dug down into Nederland and not just lease a building, but to own a building, which makes us even more of the community. My brother is currently living in Conifer, and he's doing everything he can to try to find a place here closer with his lady. And my wife and I, again, we have 4 kids. We live in Parker, and my goal is within 2 years to be able to move this direction. And if something pops up, please let us know. But 4 kids and a wife, so we need a bigger place. But by all means, that's our short-term / middle-term goal.
Excellent. One more question for you. You talked with several of the neighbors. Are you confident that they're comfortable with what you're doing?
Yes. The one neighbor that did talk to us, and I went and met them at their home, and they also called in on the planning commission, I believe it was the Beebes that live up next to us. They are concerned about odor. We kind of explained to them how it works, whether it be us in our cultivation or whether it be in all the cultivations in Colorado. It seems like some cities or some towns kind of really regulate it and some aren't so heavy on it. We don't, for security and safety, we don't want odors. We don't want people to know where we are. We're here in front of you, saying here's our address. But again, we would kind of like to be low key and people kind of wouldn't even know where we are. There's a green building on the hill. We're not going to have, the Bakery Brothers fine grown marijuana cultivated here. We're kind of leaving it, as clandestine as possible, trying to be, low key. And most importantly, I agree that odor is the most important thing. We're not going to have lights coming out of the building. There aren't going to be vibrations or noise. The one thing that it seems that people are really concerned about when it comes to marijuana is the odor. So, we're doing things like recirculating the air. We have, I believe it's 16 different can fan 125s, which will be circulating upwards of 30,000 square feet of air per cubic feet per minute in a building that's 4,000 square feet. We won't be necessarily exhausting air because we have units, our air conditioning units actually will be taking care of the humidity within the building itself. So there are things that we can do to not have to exhaust air, to do our best to keep things inside. Plus, our plants and our cultivation practice require higher levels of CO2 as food. So it wouldn't be smart for us to be exhausting, what we're paying for or what the plants need. So those are the type of things we're going to do to mitigate that issue. And, we really feel like we're not going to have an issue at all. If for some reason there would be an issue, we welcome our neighbors to knock on our door. If they don't feel comfortable, by all means, please reach out to somebody in this committee or somebody in the town to say, hey, we kind of, have an odor, which again, we really don't see that happening.
Good.
But we're there to take care of it immediately. We're older guys and age doesn't really have to matter, but I'm 50 this month. My brother's 46 and we're ready to be responsible, continuing on just who we are as people.
Great. Yeah, I really thought in your application, you did a good job of laying out the ancillary benefits that come with the business, and I appreciate that. Question on, it's a purpose-built building, obviously. How much construction do you have left to do, and what's the impact on the neighbors going to be?
I really see about 10 to 15%. We've had the engineer, we've had the electrician and the plumber and the mechanical all be in the building who originally started the building for the Johnson brothers. So even though we brought in people to come and bid out these jobs, we were fortunate enough to actually get the original people who actually did these jobs. And when we talk, we feel like we have about 15% more build out, but it's not even a build out. As of, I believe, April 2nd, the Johnson brothers got a new permit to finish out the rough, mechanical, the rough, electrical, all the roughs of the building. They passed. So we pretty much have to lay a floor like this, a CVT tile. We have to insulate the building. We want to vapor seal the building so that there are no nothing should come in or out as far as odor or any kind of contaminants.
Great.
So flooring, drywall, insulation, and then a couple of lighting or electrical receptacles for additional fans or lighting. But the Johnson brothers really did a great job as far as designing that building, because that's what they wanted to use it for. We're really just coming in and being able to use something that's already pretty much been done except finishing it. So I'd say about 15%. And our goal is, if we get through this committee this evening and get licensed, is we're hoping by August 1st we can be up and running, because there really isn't that much to be done.
Great. Yeah, you got lucky.
Yeah, we really did. It's crazy. Not only with the building, but I was driving up here with my wife, and I was like, people in Denver look at ugly buildings, they're an industrial. I'm like, we get to look at a reservoir with a mountain and come down to the bakery and get some pizza and go get some barbecue. 30 seconds away from our building. We can, put a picnic bench out there and literally go fishing. It's just,
we have a winter too.
Yeah, we're like, it's all around amazing. Yeah, we can't believe it.
Okay, that's excellent. And then Miranda, I want to address one to you. The PD is on board, and we've crossed that bridge.
Yeah, police department and fire department have no concerns.
Great. Okay. Fellow trustees, anything more to ask?
I'll ask my parking question. So will four off-street spaces be okay with you? Will that work? Okay.
That should be totally fine. Again, we know there's a bus that can drive up pretty much to the bottom of our hill. So if we had somebody who needed to take a bus, even us, we would do that. To be able to drive up here with my brother every day and just talk about what we're doing for the rest of our lives, we don't need to be in two different cars doing that. Probably I'd say for the first 6 months to probably close to a year, it's literally going to be him and I. We're not rich by any means. We're owners that we're going to do our own work. We're not hiring people to do this for us. This is our dream. We're going to do this. Our hands are the ones that are going to get dirty, and we don't see a lot of people being up here.
Great. Okay, are there any other clarifying questions from the board to the applicants?
Oh, hi, this is Tanya. I was just making sure this is just flower you're growing,
Yes, we are
not
just
doing any extractions or.
we're farmers. We're just the most bottom of the totem pole. We're planting the plants with dirt and watering with water, and that's who we are. We're not a MIP. We're not making concentrates. We're not a bakery. We're not baking goods. We're not a dispensary. We're not selling anything out of our doors. We are strictly a marijuana cultivation. We're just the farmers.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I actually do have one question for Miranda, if I could.
Go ahead.
There is nothing in code, I imagine, that has any kind of parking requirement for this particular case.
No, so the way in which we interpreted this is that it fell under that manufacturing and industrial, which says you will determine off-street parking in the SRU.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicants? Okay. And now is when we move to public comment. I'll ask for public comment in favor of the application to speak first, then anybody that's against to speak after that. Who puts their hand up first for pro?
I do have 2 comments to read into the record.
Great.
All right, a short letter to our board. Terry Burgeon here at East Street Garage. I have met a good man in Cassidy Ortiz. I believe as a community, he'll be a good fit. Give him a chance. I don't think you will regret it. That's one. And the next one, my name is Scott Rainey and I live at 236 East 5th Street. The Bakery Brothers, Cassidy and Jason, are applying to be a cannabis cultivation company just a few lots from my house. After meeting with them and seeing the inside of their building, I have no problems recommending the board approve their application. They are clearly dedicated to their craft and express the desire to become a part of the community as time goes on. I believe they will both be good neighbors and local business owners.
Good work, guys.
Thank you.
Anybody that wants to speak against?
And I don't know if there's anyone else online who wants to speak for, but *6 if you're on the phone. Or against.
And put your hand up to let us know you want to talk. Are you seeing anything?
Nope.
Wow, this is going better than I would have thought. We're pretty quick. Are we then in a position to close public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Does the applicant have any further comments or responses to the public testimony so far?
No, thank you.
Okay. If there's, then the public hearing is now closed, right? Okay, then we have one more opportunity, board, to ask any clarifying questions of the applicant if you want to do that. Okay, then we're going to close the public hearing. At this point, let's see, the Board of Trustees will now move on to discussion deliberation of the application. Is there any more deliberation to be done?
I move to approve the SRU application for the Bakery Brothers LLC with no conditions as written.
I second.
Macy, can we call the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Blakemore.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the one thing that was missing in the packet, sorry, we'll congratulate in a moment, is a resolution. So we would be looking for direction from the Board of Trustees to draft that resolution to go on consent agenda on June 21st. I think we just need kind of a nod of 4 that you support
Nodding.
us doing so.
Mhm.
Okay, now congratulations.
Congratulations. We love bringing.
But don't leave yet because you're not quite done.
But wait,
Now's the other part.
There's more.
There is more.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move to 5.8, the retail marijuana cultivation part of the hearing, and I've got a script for that too. Okay, we're going to, at this point, convene the Town of Nederland Marijuana License Authority. Macy, can you take a roll call of members present?
Trustee Blakemore,
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Here.
Trustee Baumhover,
Here.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Here.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, I'll open the hearing on the application for a new marijuana cultivation facility license for the Bakery Brothers LLC at 258 East 5th Street. It says the application is for a new marijuana cultivation facility. The standards for approval for a new cultivation facility license are under section 6.279 of Netherlands Municipal Code.
And Mayor Pro Tem Hold, you can actually let Macy, which is the Marijuana Licensing Authority Secretary, read all of the rest of that script.
I'll miss it. But
We'll put her on the spot here.
All right. So this application is for a new marijuana cultivation facility license. The standards for approval of a new marijuana cultivation facility license are under section 6-279 of the Netherlands Municipal Code. A license may be issued if the Marijuana Licensing Authority determines that the applicant has met the requirements of section 6-279. I will read you the section 6-279 requirements. The application, including any required attachments and submissions, is complete and signed by the applicant. The applicant has paid all required fees. The application does not contain a material falsehood or misrepresentation. Prior to the issuance of a license, the premises at which the marijuana establishment will be operated has been inspected by the local agencies described in paragraph 6-2771 above to determine compliance with the town's building and technical codes and is permitted under section 6-284 of this article. The application, applicant, and proposed marijuana establishment complies with all of the requirements of this article, this code, and all state laws and administrative regulations pertaining to retail marijuana. The applicant and manager are of a good moral character. The proposed marijuana establishment and the applicant, including each individual owner, investor, and manager, satisfy the requirements of this code. There are any special conditions on a license as may be necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and to obtain compliance with the requirements of this article and other applicable law, but such conditions shall not be unreasonably impracticable. As defined in Section 16, Article, not good at Roman numerals, at Article XVIII of the Colorado Constitution. The license has not been transferred without the applicable required town approval, change in ownership, change in location, fees, etc. Any attempt to transfer or assign a license without town approval voids the license. The application was complete and contained all required documents and information. The application has been submitted to the state for the approval. Has it been approved?
It has not been approved yet, is my understanding, but it is pending along with the town of Nederland. And Marijuana Licensing Authority will expect town of Nederland to approve before they approve.
Correct.
Town staff and the fire department do not have any concerns with the request for the license. No other town department stated any concerns with issuing the license. Public notice of this hearing has been posted at the location as well as published in the newspaper in accordance with the Nederland Municipal Code, and the record of this hearing contains proof of such public notice.
Thank you, Macy. I enter the application. All the supporting documentation is contained in the authority packet into the record of the hearing. Does anybody have questions for town staff on this application? Tanya? No? Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, we're good. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor or opposition to this application?
So I would ask that the Board of Trustees allow the three comments from the SRU to be considered for this hearing as well, from Scott Rainey, Maxwell Pollitt, and Terry Burgeon.
Good, go ahead,
Do you want me to read them again?
please. Oh, the same ones?
Oh, yeah, the same. I'm happy to, but the same ones that were included in the SRU, they're applicable to this application. So we would ask that they also be considered as in favor of their approval for their marijuana license.
Excellent. Okay, that makes sense. Do any members of the authority have any questions of the applicant or any member of the public that spoke? But there's no members of the public that have spoken. And does the applicants wish to make any closing comments?
If we get approved, thank you guys so much for allowing us to be a part of it.
Thank you for considering us.
Yes. Thank
You bet. You did a good job of putting your packet together. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also reaching out to the neighbors. I really appreciated that.
I'll now close the public hearing. And then this is where we make a motion to grant or not grant the application.
I move to approve the Bakery Brothers LLC's application for a marijuana cultivation license at 258 East 5th Street.
And I will second.
AC can call the vote.
And Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover?
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone?
Yes.
And Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. Now, you guys get to get out before dark.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate you.
That's a long commute home. Be safe. Thank you for finally occupying that space. And best of luck to you. You bet. Well done. Okay, so that concludes 5.8. And we'll move on to hazard mitigation plan resolution 5.9. Miranda, set the table, please.
Yes, so this is specific to FEMA funding for Big Springs egress project scoping. It's a little unique. So with all the complexities of FEMA congressional designated spending, as a part of the application, we have to indicate that you've adopted the hazard mitigation plan that Boulder County creates. The challenge is we are right in the middle of drafting a new hazard mitigation plan. So basically the question before you is approving this resolution 2022-34, adopting the Boulder hazard mitigation. But there is language in this resolution that basically indicates you are not truly adopting that until FEMA has approved it as the document that is accepted for the county. So you're just basically making a preliminary statement of, yes, we will adopt this hazard mitigation plan. We're just doing it a bit premature, but we'll only adopt it once FEMA approves. So I need this for the grant. Without, I won't be able to apply. So that's the question before you is, will you approve resolution 2022-34, adopting the 2022-2027 Boulder Hazard Mitigation Plan as approved by FEMA for this grant
As approved by FEMA in the future.
in the future.
Right.
So, no.
Right, so this is pretty much done. So when it came back to us, there were minor adjustments that we all had to make, but it's near done. Mike Chard felt confident we would have the formal document with very little amendments from what you see here done in the next couple months. We just unfortunately, as with time, don't have the luxury of waiting to adopt this resolution.
Good. Okay, so I guess the question before us is, does the board approve resolution 2022-34 adopting the Boulder Hazard Mitigation Plan?
Yeah, I looked at it and I looked at how much, what was left to be done. There's an action plan left, but they're planning on having it done July. And they're still taking public comment. I mean, it's all good. I think it will be done by July, and I'm in favor of approving this resolution.
And we can obviously always bring that, and we're happy to, Mike Chard and I can bring this back once it is formally adopted, so you know what we've officially committed to. But again, yeah, he feels very confident, minor changes, and to your point, he also does feel on track for adoption in July, if not, again, August.
Fabulous. Okay, do we have a motion?
Do you want to do public comment? It's an action item.
Yeah, it is an action item. Public comment. Do we have any anybody online that wants to speak, because there's nobody in the room?
Not that I see. I know we're empty now. It was so much nicer when there was a whole audience.
Indeed.
Are you seeing anybody?
No, no one online.
Okay, and we'll close public comment. And now we go to resolution, right? Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask, like functionally, by adopting this plan, I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. So I'm reading this plan and it's like, I have no basis from which to evaluate most of the things that are in it, right? So like, is there a summary, nuts and bolts wise, of what the town is committing itself to by adopting this?
It's really just that, so like Town of Nederland's component is like really just identifying what our risks are, identifying our assets, what are things that we need to focus on financially speaking that are really non-controversial. So like we had put in there like radios, there's definitely a need for radios for our emergency personnel. There's a need for constant mitigation. So just more of that we're making a commitment, and actually helps us fund all sorts of future projects, especially if you're looking at FEMA funding, this is going to be a requirement.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that we're committing ourselves like a must do, but like any other master plan, these are our desires for Boulder County as a whole and then Nederland with regards to hazard mitigation.
So there's no financial commitment that's being made here.
No.
And there's no, we're not restricting Nederland's ability to do anything in particular.
No.
By adopting this resolution.
Nope.
I just wanted that to be
Nope,
absolutely
we're
clear.
just allowing ourselves the opportunity to pursue more federal funds that would require a plan like this.
Great. Well, then I would move to approve resolution 2022-34, adopting the Boulder Hazard Mitigation Plan.
I'll second.
Macy, call the vote.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Mahone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Then we're at this point moving on to discussion items. Public comment can be given for discussion items once called. As before, limited to 3 minutes. I don't know if we're going to have any, but now we move on to 6.1 annexation policy. Miranda, please set it up.
It's actually Trustee Coombs' Miles' turn.
So, I mean, this is not what I'm proposing that we do as an annexation policy. This is kind of an example of an annexation process that I synthesized from many other towns' annexation processes. Right. So I took what people have already done, put it in less legalese, less ordinance language, hopefully more layman's terms, so that we can discuss which aspects of those processes we like, which ones maybe we don't like, how long we think this kind of a process should take, at what point should it be referred to, a vote of the people, if at any, just a starting point for discussion. So I'm not advocating for any one of these steps or any one of these processes in particular by presenting this, only putting forward the basis for a conversation.
Thanks for setting it up. People, let's go around the room and see who's got questions. I really thought it was well done. It was thorough. And I think we're learning from other people's experience. Karen, you always have questions.
I do. The first one I have is for Eric Coombs Esmail. So is this not your preferred series of steps to go through? You said it. So I'm trying to understand what you put together here. Is this what you're recommending at this point, or no?
No, this is not a recommendation of any kind. This is me trying to figure out what could be the most thorough annexation process, and then to start from kind of overkill, or maybe it's not overkill, maybe it's exactly what we want to do. We want to do the most thorough, I don't know. But starting from there so that we can then, trim it down where we might think it's appropriate.
So I personally like all these steps.
Yeah, I do. I tend towards them, but I'm very open
and
to
and I
input.
think more steps is better than less, because as the governing body, we could remove some as long as we're fair in doing things. Okay, so that's a general, my general comment on it. I love it. I do have a couple of suggestions. One correction, one suggestion. The suggestion is that the applicant pays for the election cost if there is an election. And the correction is under the review criteria number 7 is not required by state law.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know how that ended up in there, but it did.
Okay.
Probably a copy paste issue, because it used to be required by state law, but it no longer is.
Well, I spent about an hour trying to find it.
No, yeah, I am aware that the 3 mile planning area is not required by state law. Yeah,
Nor the comprehensive plan.
but we could still
And I,
require it.
and
Yeah.
I think it's very important to require something like that, because that defines the community's desires for the town as far as growth is concerned. Okay.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I made sure to put that in there, besides the parenthetical, we can just ignore that, was that I think that there could be a system in which there's an expedited process for areas that have been identified in the comp plan as primary planning area. So if, we identified parcels through the comprehensive planning process for annexation, why go through such an onerous and intensive process if the community has essentially already agreed that this is somewhere that we want to expand to, right? So then we could just expedite that, and we could say,
Yeah. So when I lived in Boulder, I lived in one of those areas that was in the comp plan. And it was surrounded by City of Boulder and enclave of unincorporated. But the neighborhood did not want to be annexed. And every few years, the city would come to us and there would be a lot of anxiety around that because there's a cost involved of connecting to the city utilities, redoing the road to conform to the standards of the city, losing our water rights, all these things would go with it. And they would not annex the enclave without everyone agreeing to it.
But
So
in
we
that
just-
case, there would be no application to begin with, right? Because the applicant is the owner of the property, not the town. The town wouldn't
Yes.
apply to annex,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
property. So
Thank you
yeah.
for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand that, but it's good to remember that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think I understand what flagpole is, but read me in, please.
Yeah, it's basically if you follow a right of way along a certain path and then you annex a piece of property that is connected to town only through this kind of flagpole shape on the map, right? But there are limitations for flagpole annexations in state law, and it seemed to me that we didn't need to put any additional limitations for ourselves other than whatever regular annexation process we would usually go through. But because it's a different type of annexation under state law, I thought it was just worth calling out in this that it didn't seem to me that there would be any benefit in having separate rules for flagpoles in Nederland that I could think of. Certainly open to any ideas there.
Yeah, on the same topic, you've looked at a number of different towns and you're familiar with how it's worked in process.
So I did talk to the mayor, the now mayor of Lyons, was a trustee when we first started discussing this and discussing their particular process. And they haven't had many opportunities to use their new annexation process. They did use it for Planet Bluegrass, I think, to annex that property into the town of Lyons. And you know, the level of detail that their that their ordinance goes into is quite stunning, really. Like down to like exactly what scale the map needs to be, and you know, all these very, very specific details. She did say that it was quite onerous of a process, that it did feel maybe unnecessarily so. But at the same time, it also does ensure a certain level of conformity for annexation applications so that they read the same way. And that, because they haven't had another one, she hasn't gotten to see that in practice yet. But that was the idea, right? That like that the people of the town would not be confused when applications come in, kind of like our SRUs do now. Like they're kind of every which way, right? Like they're in different orders and people address things a bit differently. They have a different style of map. They have, you know, and then it becomes maybe something that not everybody would be used to or familiar with. So the idea was to make sure that anytime something this monumental would happen, like expanding town boundaries, that would always look the same so that nobody would ever be confused. So I do kind of appreciate that component of it, even though they did find it to be a real drag.
But it's a complete cookbook.
Yeah.
Good. When is the first time that we'll ever need to face this? Do we have to let the agreement with Boulder County expire before we can entertain this?
Yeah, technically. I mean, we did tell them in that MOU that we could kind of pull out of that at any point. So if we were to pass an annexation ordinance, I think that's another thing that we need to talk about is how we would want to do that, right? Like if we want to pass as a board an ordinance that would include going to a vote of the people for a certain parcel size or, you know, a certain type of annexation, I think that ordinance might actually be best placed in front of the people as well. That to me just makes a certain amount of logical sense. If we were to say that's not how we're going to do this, we're really going to do all of these things as a board, and the BOT is going to, you know, make these decisions solely in its discretion, which is allowed.
Yeah.
Then I would say we could pass it like any other ordinance. But to me, there's like a certain logic there of saying like, we're gonna let the people decide where the borders of town are.
Yeah.
Especially at a certain scale of change. Then let's let them decide whether or not this is the process that they want to follow for doing so.
What's the earliest we could do that?
That's a question for Miranda.
Whenever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for Jennifer too. She'd be
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah, I
comments.
think at this point, we need direction from the Board of Trustees to obviously work with our legal and their legal. But at any point when the board wants to start that.
Could I clarify, would you be saying
Yeah,
that we
What are you guys talking
have,
about?
We're talking about annexation.
Yeah, but you're
items.
saying when is the soonest somebody can start annexing? We haven't even gotten through this
no,
meeting
Tanya,
yet.
we're not talking about annexation. We're talking about the process of a policy. Currently, this is a discussion about, do we want
Right.
a policy? Do we like the idea of this policy? So it's a clarifying question for Eric.
But I don't, okay. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think the question was how fast can we move on developing an ordinance to
Correct.
pass to have an annexation policy in place, not how fast can we start annexing properties.
And take to the people.
Yeah, right.
Well, and trustee or Attorney Mattson, correct me if I'm wrong, if the desire of the Board of Trustees is to have a policy or an ordinance, that would be something we would do ourselves in Boulder County. We would just alert Boulder County that we were doing so, but it wouldn't require involvement of their attorneys, correct?
Correct.
Right, that's correct. And then it sounds like trustee Coombs Ismail is saying that there would also be a process in referring this ordinance to a vote.
That's the clarifying question I have is, am I hearing this proposal that we would then develop this policy as a BOT, as a draft to then have as a potential ballot option on the special election coming up?
That would right now be my preferred method of passing such an ordinance.
So I was picking up what you were putting
Yeah.
down. Okay.
So
I think it's the least controversial, most democratic, and clearest way of establishing an annexation policy for Nederland.
So secondary questions. I really also appreciated how thorough of a job you did here. I think fundamentally what we have to look at as a BOT is we don't need an annexation policy. We're a statutory town, so we already have a process. When the topic of annexation comes up, it creates a lot of stress, whether it is out of a misunderstanding of how state process works, the fact that just about all the steps that are in here, minus it going to the citizen vote, is required by state law. I would agree that we should probably make an annexation policy, and that annexation policy should then be given to the people to vote on. And in reality, it already exists for us because it's in state statute. And the only things we are really adding is the vote of the people to a large extent. So I would say that we could very quickly move this into a draft that then we could help edit following sunshine laws amongst each other and then bring back as a discussion item as an actual draft for a policy. Miranda, when's the latest we could put this on the
I
election?
knew you were gonna ask me. I'm looking right now. I believe ballots go out like that first week of July, if I recall correctly. So we definitely, you this month, you would need to pull that together in order to have it on the ballots because they have to go to Uakava military voters way early. That's all right. Yeah.
So I have some clarifying questions.
I have a question still. I haven't had a chance to comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have several things I wanted to bring up that I think was maybe missing that are pretty important. With the election being triggered by 10 acres, what about a smaller acreage but with a high density? Don't you think there should be something related to the density of a project as well as the acreage? That's just a question that I personally think there should be some sort of related to density can be more affecting to a community than even just land. You put 10 houses on 10 acres, you put, 60 houses on 10 acres, it's a whole different situation. So, or on 5 acres. So I think I would push to have something dealing with density for triggering an election. And I also think an election should be given the opportunity to properties adjacent to the land that's being annexed that are going to be affected by developments. So they may not, they're not part of town of Nederland because obviously the land's being annexed to be part of it. I think it would be fair to allow the neighbors up to a certain distance be allowed to vote in this election. That's my point number 2 on the election process. The other point I was thinking that's missing, that's pretty important, is traffic studies for annexations. I don't see anything on here regarding traffic studies. And I'd like to get people's feedback on that, especially for those that trigger elections. That's pretty important. I also feel like you, on your point number 5, where it's like saying that the town is capable of integrating, I'd like to push it to that the applicant needs to get a letter from Public Works clearly saying that they're capable of serving this addition to the community without sacrificing the services to existing residents. I would like that to be a step, you know, where Public Works studies it and puts a seal, yes or no. And if no, then there maybe could be a flow chart of the next steps. But I think that's really important, that it's really, that's all understood before it gets past the Planning Commission. I also think that, wait, where's my notes? There needs to be something in place to protect the idea that somebody maybe wants to annex their house with 5 acres and they say they're not planning on doing any sort of development. What's to stop them in the next year or two from all of a sudden dividing up that 5 acres, you know? I know there's a whole process with that, but I still feel like it would be a little bit disingenuous for someone to ask to be annexed, saying that they're only want one house and then to come out and do. I'd like some kind of safeguard that what they're showing the Planning Commission and the town of Nederland when they're asking to be annexed is the plan for at least the next 5 years. I just don't want to see people change their mind and then we've annexed something that we can't handle. Those are some of the really important points that I would like to see added into this annexation proposal. So it was traffic study, Public Works approval, election triggered not only by acreage, but by density, and that needs to be determined what would be enough of a density that it could be impactful to the communities. And forgot what else I said, but it's a good start, I think, if anybody has any comments on those additions.
A question first.
Yeah.
Essentially, the density is going to be defined by the zoning, right?
Well, so that's,
There's no zoning.
well, it's going to have to be zoned in order to become part of town as part
Yeah,
of
but
the
at which
application
point
process.
does that become an election? That's
Right.
my question.
No, understood. So I do have it like just there is something in there that I put in there, and you know, I'm not actually sure that a July 1st, deadline is really doable for this because there are some things to discuss and it just seems too soon. But
I second that.
But that aside, I did put in here this idea of there being an annexation impact report. And that annexation impact report could have all of those things that Tanya just described in it. And I, in fact, imagine that it would. I simply did not enumerate all of the details of that yet because I also believe that it should not simply be Public Works necessarily that does it, but that there's actually a professionally prepared report for us to review that is not necessarily biased in favor of town staff or the applicant, right? I think it's actually safer for the applicant if they come up with something that is professionally developed from a third party that says, this is what we think the impact is going to be. We've gotten input from town staff. We've gotten input from the property owners. This is what it's looking like to us. I feel like that would be safer for both parties. And yeah, traffic study should be part of that. Absolutely.
But what if, I mean, what if they go through all this trouble and Public Works is like, we're at 75% capacity right now and don't feel comfortable,
Yeah,
annexing?
then the BOT would have
Are
to
they
take that
gonna
under
have that
consideration.
opportunity? Is there?
My
that it
guess
goes-
is in the pre-application meeting.
Yeah.
All of those steps would be addressed.
Mhm.
And when the person
Right, I
came
just
and
wanna
said,
make that
hey,
really
I have
clear.
this property,
Yeah.
Miranda would ask Public Works, and we'd never even get to the application point because it would be, it's a cool idea, but right now, no, we don't have that capacity, and that ends it. That's the
But of
first
course, an applicant has every right to
To
apply
waste
anyway,
their money, and
right? To
cool,
pay
we'll
the
take
fee,
it.
apply anyway, and try to get enough community support that it passes regardless, right? So like that can be done in the
Fair.
within this process.
Well, but there's the physicality of the fact that we can't serve them. I mean,
Well,
it
that's
doesn't matter
actually
if they have public
under
support.
under state law, we wouldn't really be allowed as a board to refer it to an election if we as a board did not think that the town could service the property. So that's already
Gotcha.
baked into it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do think, Tanya, that all those things that you said should be in that impact report so that the BOT can make the correct decision of whether or not to refer to an election or to end the application at that point in time. The other thing that I just wanted to mention about density is that we do have a process for density increase, which is the plan unit development process. I wouldn't necessarily be completely against making it such that if a PUD would be required, it triggers an election. I'm not totally against that, but it's something we could discuss. Though I do think it's kind of doubling up on the process that needs to be done anyway. So, the plan unit development process kind of already exists. It's something to think about for sure. And I just wanted to say, while I completely understand and respect your idea of letting people outside of town vote, I do fundamentally do not agree that people outside of the town of Nederland should vote in Nederland elections ever. But I also don't think that's
The
really
thing is, they're
possible.
being annexed and now
They're not,
their neighbor.
though. They're not being annexed.
No, but their
still outside
neighbor's
of town.
being annexed.
Yeah, but
And their
they're neighbors.
neighbors
They're
could
not.
be
That's
creating
it.
traffic issues and they have a right to,
I
they're the
don't
ones
know.
most.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do have a right.
Tanya and Eric, can I throw something in there that might
Yeah.
help with that? It has to go, Boulder County reviews the annexation application. And so I think that would be an opportunity for the neighbors who live in the county to provide input.
Yeah, and I did make provisions for all surrounding landowners to provide input. That's in this process here, but not vote in our election.
Can we talk about this idea of bringing the ordinance to the voters? Is that typically done? It seems like a really complicated document for citizens to, be able to understand and be knowledgeable and make an informed vote on. I guess I'm asking
I think they can
Amanda
handle it.
and Jennifer Madsen, what they think about that. And maybe Eric.
So your question is, could it be done could the ballot language be simple enough for people to understand and make a informed judgment on?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm wondering, should we bring it up in a ballot for the voters to vote on, or should we have a public meeting to look at it? Maybe what the public would be more interested in is looking at the series of steps that Eric has already put together, rather than seeing this in legalese. So here's what we're thinking of doing. Here are the steps. We could do like a PowerPoint presentation to explain them and get input from the public that way. I've never voted on an ordinance before in an election. I don't know if that's typical. I don't know if we'd be getting good informed input that way.
Yeah, I think my counterpoint to that would be, I think all of those ideas are fantastic and we should do all of them leading up to the election in which this is on the ballot. That would be my argument, that we have a concerted campaign to educate the town on what this ordinance is and what it means, that it's giving them a certain amount of power and new responsibility as residents when it comes to annexation applications, because it would be doing that. And I think that if we can't as a town handle the ordinance that gives us that power, then I'm not sure that we can handle the power itself, right? Like, I do feel like it would be an opportunity for the town to get a little bit more engaged and a little bit more knowledgeable about how this process might work, and to basically have seen that the town, I think that such an ordinance would pass. That is my gut feeling right now. I could be wrong. Maybe it won't. But if it doesn't pass, I think that's really important for us to know that the town does not want this kind of a process in place. Would be really compelling to know.
Both directions give us market signals that we need to have.
Because remember, this is adding additional regulations to an already existing annexation procedure, as Trustee Baumhofer has pointed out before, right? So this is town saying, no, we want this power, we want this authority. Or town saying, you know what? We don't really mind if you guys just make this decision yourself, as state statute describes.
Yeah. Where are we going with tonight? Is the opening round of a discussion. Where would we like to see this go? Could this end up as a working session where we do bring the public in and it's special purpose, single purpose?
That was actually going to be my proposal, was that every trustee essentially redline a copy of this, individually send them to Eric, and we can then meet as a board of trustees, and we can probably quickly we all agree on the vast part of the document, and we can have little red line sections to discuss exactly the type of list that Tanya just brought up, and then we can bring it to a motion and a vote amongst ourselves. Then we open it up to the public who's there at that working session to further deliberate with us, because we have then a document that we have all agreed upon that we're ready to go with. We listen to public comment, we bring it back. I still think it could be possible to get this on the election, though. With everything else we have a crazy schedule right now. So my question is, fundamentally, I believed the purpose of this annexation policy was to provide the citizens of Ned that may have felt like there was desires by any member of this board, past, present, even future, to annex, to assure them that no, we just really need to renegotiate the IGA with Boulder County, and currently Boulder County is actually the end all be all of our annexation policy, not this board, not the citizens of Nederland. We do believe as a board we want that back in our power, and the ordinance we are suggesting to create is to give that power to the citizen. So while I appreciate Eric's logic that maybe the ordinance should go to a vote, I really don't think it needs to, because fundamentally it does not change what the end result of it is, which is you have the power. And if anybody wants to vote against having a vote, go ahead and do so. But I really don't think that we need to create extra work for town staff, for Macy already running a special election, to put another thing on this special election, because we should probably get to the next discussion, which is also about, are we going to throw more at this special election? So my proposal is we all redline this, we come to a work session, and then we individually vote on anything that isn't fully agreed upon in consensus.
Agreed.
Yeah. And
It looks like section 10 is where a lot of Tanya's concerns would go, right? Step 10.
The revised annexation impact report, right? So there was the idea that I had was that it's kind of a two-part process. There's an initial annexation impact report that comes right at the beginning of the process. And then by the end of the process, it's completed, right? And everyone has contributed and it's kind of signed off on by all, relevant interested parties, school district,
Yeah, but
department.
I feel like you could have a big impact and be a smaller than 10-acre addition, depending on the density
Well,
you
that
put
that
in.
acreage is completely arbitrary, Tanya, and I am
Right.
very
Okay.
open to you lowering it, raising it, changing it around like that. That number, I think we should come to some kind of agreement on. But I also think I completely agree with what Trustee Baumhover just said. We don't need to put it to an election.
No.
But I think that we shouldn't maybe decide on that until we see what the reaction is from the community to this proposal, to this idea, and see where we're at in that regard, like in a work session or in a special meeting, and then we can kind of get a feel for how contentious this is going to be, because the thing that I don't want to do, right, is ram this down anybody's throat, right? If it happens as a product of the most democratic possible process that we can come up with as a board, I think then we have done our kind of duty of shepherding the community in the direction that they themselves want to go, rather than trying to put that on someone.
I wanted
I have a question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Oh, yeah. So this is to answer one of Tanya's concerns. I'm looking at the state statutes for annexation is section 3112-105 limitations. And prior to completion of any annexation within 3 miles of the town, the municipality shall have in place a plan for that area that generally describes the proposed location, character, and extent of streets, subways, bridges, waterways, waterfronts, parkways, playgrounds, squares, parks, aviation fields, other public ways, grounds, open space, public utilities, and terminals for water, light, sanitation, transportation, and power to be provided by the municipality and the proposed land uses of the area. So it kind of addresses some of your transportation concerns and road concerns. There has to be a plan in place before the annexation is complete.
And the other section that I would point to was review criteria number 9 that I have in there. That says that the proposed design does not place the burden on current residents of the town to provide for services, including but not limited to water, transportation, arterial streets or bridges, public parks or recreation areas, police and fire, etc. So the idea would be that the burden is on the property owners who are applying for annexation, not current residents.
But of course, they will require water and sewage, and they will require the fire department and the police to come to their house when they're called.
Indeed.
It says it does not place a burden, then nothing will get through it, because everybody who's going to apply for annexation is going to want these services.
And they're annexing into
It's
the
not
town and paying
really-
taxes for them.
Right, precisely.
Yeah.
The idea is that whatever the annexation would be, we have exorbitant PIF fees, I'll remind everyone, for water and sewers. So they're going to be paying their way on that at least.
Gotcha.
But the other thing that we'd be looking at would be a financial analysis of what it would mean for the town for this property to become integrated into our borders, and whether or not that would cover the services that property would require. And we would make that determination based on town staff's best recommendation, and ideally for me, based on a third-party analysis.
Right. Now, what do you mean here by that the area is urban?
So that is actually required by state law.
Okay, because we're not urban
No,
nobody.
we are considered the wildland urban interface. So technically, Nederland is urban. So it has to be,
So what would constitute somebody not being urban? Like,
if it was an agricultural annexation, like if they were literally annexing a wheat field, I think that would not be urban or near. or soon
nothing
to
within
be
our
urban.
boundary is considered non-urban.
That's right.
Gotcha.
There might be some weird spot if we ever, there is
So-
potential to, like, not us, but it is legal for municipalities, governments to sometimes work with Forest Service, and the Forest Service could potentially let us annex. That's where that might come in, but that's like a.
Yeah.
What is this? We have our chapter 15 in our code where it's all these annexation procedures. Did you base a lot of that off of this, or?
Wait, in whose code?
Chapter
It's Town of
15 in our
Netherlands,
code
Chapter
simply
15.
refers to the state statutes
Right.
because that is currently our annexation policy. And then our
Gotcha.
IGA
Right.
gives Boulder County the final say, not this board, as a result of that being the planning document that dictates future planning. So what's outlined in our code currently is the state statute.
Is there anything different about what you've proposed that's in here? It all seems rather similar. I
There's a
don't
lot
see-
more in what Eric has
Yeah,
proposed,
a
a lot
lot
more
more steps.
restrictions, a lot more steps, and a lot more say that the community gets.
Okay, well, that's good.
I think it's
I'm
important to
all for that.
run this procedure by the planning commission before we finalize it, because they have responsibility for land use.
Big good point. Really good point.
Indeed, the BZA as well, even. I think we should get input from SAB and ProSAB. I think we should get
Yeah.
input
Well,
from every single
that's the
advisory board.
Nederland
and town
public
board.
process, so
Exactly.
we'll go through
We
it.
got to go through the public process.
So the question before the board tonight is, does the Board of Trustees have questions, comments, recommendations? I think we're getting a lot of those on the table. Do we have a process for bringing this forward? So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Well, what I would ask is that anywhere in here that I've put, words like sufficient, like a map with sufficient detail, right? I put that in there because I don't know what that actually is, right? Lions has a very laid out process for that. We might just want to copy paste it, but if anybody has ideas of what that means, that would be nice to fill that out a bit, along with that impact report, right? What is the annexation impact report? What are its components? Who prepares it? Like, I didn't think all that through yet.
This sounds like a subcommittee with planning commission and board of trustees.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna take forever.
Eric, were you thinking the impact study would be for every applicant?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And whatever this process is that we set up, it will be the process that any applicant has to go through.
Yeah. Unless
Yeah, but
my
there's like
proposal-
extra stuff. for
unless
the-
it's already in the comp plan, then
Right.
potentially there's a streamlined process.
Yeah, I like that. What else do we want to accomplish tonight with this?
There was a suggestion of a subcommittee with planning commission. I would rather us work on this as a BOT while this is with land use. I believe planning commission did have a subcommittee regarding some of these topics, maybe not previous BOT, but the previous BOT before that. Could go back into public record and see some of the comments made by planning commission. I think to a certain extent, they have a lot on their plate already. And if we're going to take this on, this is something we can take on and by all means send to the planning commission to review. But I think to try to connect two very busy boards and wait for a subcommittee to move forward on this is going to become difficult with the renegotiating the IGA and the extension we have. Whether or not we want to admit it, this is tied in very, very closely with the discussions with the IGA. And I believe having this very clear to be able to show the citizens and take feedback with this is going to behoove this board when moving into the IGA discussions.
Yeah. And I left a space for that in this process, right? There's referral to Boulder County in there as step 6, that if there were to be any kind of negotiation IGA wise, this is where we have the opportunity to insert whatever Boulder County might want from us for whatever we're asking from them when it comes to
It's early in the
annexation. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this.
Well, it sounds like a lot of the filling in the details here would be the staff and people who have knowledge about the process that we go through right now for, we do have a process for annexations actually. And so, and as far as the standard, the maps to be used and all, I don't have that kind of expertise. At this level, this looks really good to me. I'd rather have someone else fill in the details and then have us review it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's completely reasonable. But there are some things like the acreage, Tanya's density question, like these sorts of things. I think we need to, at some point, vote on it before we direct town staff to actually put an ordinance together. And if there's any other things that you think of that town staff isn't gonna think of, right? Like, yeah, we don't have the expertise for everything, but to some extent, we might have an idea that we could throw in there. Let's use this time to do that. Use this time to maybe direct town staff towards a certain goal. Even if we don't all agree, we can at least vote on it and see what the majority thinks.
Yeah, I think the density comes into zoning and planning land use. And so I would expect the density to fit into what our desires are for the town to look like as far as land uses in the future. And we don't have that. That's the purview of the Planning Commission.
However, the Planning Commission and the BZA in this process would both weigh in before any decision was made. And so I would say I think that leaves the door open for, whatever we might want to do. I don't think we're restricted in that sense, because they would have already provided their recommendation to that end.
But we want to avoid sprawl. But what does that mean? Does it mean a very dense center of town, and then as you move to the outskirts, it becomes less dense? Or is it okay to have a dense area on the outskirts? I don't know.
Right. Pockets of
it depends.
I'm suggesting it go up for an election, people vote on that.
Right.
That's all. So it's not about zoning. It's like, what would trigger an election?
Yep.
Is it just acreage, or can we add something that has to deal with density in addition, or? That's
I think I would love to see, coming up with what would be the trigger, right? Like, at what point does it trigger the election? And
Correct.
then-
We can have 5 things.
then we
under
can
that
vote on
list,
it. Yeah.
And then we'll vote on those 5 things.
So maybe that's the most important thing for us to really come back with. What triggers an election?
Yeah, to me, that is the most.
Answer. So I think we all come back with our reasons of what triggers an election, and then we will vote on those as a BOT one by one. If it wins the vote, it stays on the list. If it doesn't win the vote, it gets knocked off the list.
Well, it could be amended, like if I said 50 houses triggers an election, and you guys would be like, what about 70? I mean.
Correct. I'm just saying we'll go through the motion vote process.
Yeah.
Can we get some research done on other municipalities, like our size and our characteristics, and where their trigger point is for an election?
Yeah. So our attorney did do that, and that's the attachments to this item, as similar towns with similar sizes, with similar relationships to their counties, how annexation process works for them. And usually the trigger for an election is acreage, right? That is 10 acres. I saw as a pretty common number, but I think there's one that did have differences. So it's like 5 acres if the project has this kind of character, right? So like maybe density would be part of that, right? So we can do that.
Here's. So if the trigger's 10, then the voters are going to see the annexation application, at least the characteristics of it from a certain high level. And so they'll see what sort of density the developer is planning, and then can vote at that point on density. So I think the density will be a factor in every annexation.
Yeah, but what would trigger an election? A 7-acre addition with 70 houses would not trigger an election, but 10 acres with 5 houses would. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
I believe we're
because
getting
all
off the
in all, it's
topic of
impact.
discussion for tonight, and I believe this is the
I agree with you. I
discussion we're
just
having
transparency,
is
why I
the
keep
discussion
pushing
we
it.
need
It's
to
not
have
that-
when we have this list. So I would motion to end debate. Do we have direction as a board?
I think we do.
Everyone, please list, and next time we talk about this, come back with their suggestion, what triggers an election. Don't think town staff needs direction, right?
Correct. So at this point, this is a discussion item tonight. Is probably going to be a discussion item for some time until we nail it.
I'd love to do a work session.
Yeah.
that's dedicated to
I
this
agree
only.
with that as well.
And to notice it very, very strongly out to the public.
Yeah, maybe even start a little earlier.
Yeah, or maybe, post it at the
6
post
to
office in the
8?
library.
Yeah. Okay. Are we complete? Does anybody have anything else to add
So
or say?
we do need a motion to extend if the desire is to do home rule next.
I motion to extend to do home rule next.
So you'll want to indicate what time you're motioning to.
I'd take it to 10:30.
I'll second.
This was a discussion item, so we technically have to open it to public comment.
Oh, good point.
Trustee Coombs Ismail?
No.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol?
Yes.
And Trustee Blakemore?
Yes.
Can I request another 2-minute break?
I guess I'd just like to offer clarification that the next two work session dates, because we do the second Tuesday, are already booked. So is there a sense of urgency?
What
You
are they
want
booked
separate-
for?
So we've got the transportation parking plan meeting next week, and then July is a collaborative meeting with all the boards and commissions.
Yeah.
So you could have a separate date always, but I just want to clarify that if you're looking to use the second Tuesday, you'd be looking at August.
Well, we can still do a discussion item again before we do the work session.
Yeah.
'Cause if we moved into a work session where we had already made as many determinations as we could, then it would be more about talking to the public, which might be better than
I
us
like
talking to
that.
each other.
I like
When
that.
would you like this to come back as a discussion item, the second meeting in June or in July?
I think July is fine at this
The
point.
first meeting in July?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on the agenda. Yeah.
Karen?
So do we want to put it at the front of the agenda? Because we had public comment today about how these, issues that the public needs to get involved in are always at the end. And so everyone.
You can just come back. It's online now.
Yeah, so I just, in clarification, obviously, town staff, we recommend how to structure the agenda. We always, if you have some sort of audience participation, like an applicant, usually we try to have them go first. We have historically put them in the back, and that's really hard for them too, like if Cassidy didn't start until 10 o'clock at night. So it gets tricky, but yes, if that's the desire of the board, we can kind of keep that first meeting in July structured in a way in which you could have this sooner.
I think until this board has actually made agreements that we keep it at the end of the meeting when we're all here. And topics like home rule, maybe we move up the thing, but let's get to that one.
Yep. Okay. Then we can move on to, yeah, we probably should. Is there public comment on the 6.1, the annexation policy that we've been having? Not seeing any? Thanks for the clarification. Then we move on to 6.2, home rule ordinance. Are you going to set this up or is Jennifer mad?
Attorney Mattson is, but Trustee Baumhofer, I think, was looking for a short break?
2-second break.
Okay, go.
2 seconds. It's done. The break is over.
Okay.
How long are you calling it?
Convene at 5 past. We need to call a motion to bring ourselves back.
No, I would just confirm that trustee Corvalon is on.
Okay.
I'm right here.
Okay, good. Into the home stretch with 6.2.
Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees. The aim that was in your packet tonight outlined summary of home rule and also the process of home rule, getting that to the voters. And I can briefly outline that for you. Home rule issue may be brought to the voters either through a petition signed by 5% of the registered voters, or you as the Board of Trustees may adopt an ordinance initiating a home rule process. If you decide to adopt an ordinance, then that would go to the voters. It would need to, an election would need to be held within 120 days of the call for the election. At the same time that the voters are considering whether to go through the home rule process, they would also need to elect members for the Charter Commission. And one thing I was noticing that was missing in the aim is the number of members for the Charter Commission. By statute, for a town the size of Nederland, it would need to be 9 members for the Charter Commission, and those need to be registered electors in the municipality. So if both the vote for home rule passes and then Charter Commission members are elected, Charter Commission members then have 180 days to draft a charter. And essentially what a charter is would be the constitution of the municipality. And then that charter is submitted to the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees then submits that charter to the registered electors. It can typically be a process of about 1 year to draft the charter. And I'm not going to go into it right now, but the aim and then the memo attached does outline some of the topics that you could include in the charter and differences between home rule and statutory towns. So I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
First question is just a numbers question. It says 5%. How many registered voters do we have?
Just shy of 1,200.
1,200? Okay. So really small number of people could get this going. And this is on the docket tonight for a reason. Are we getting requests from the citizens to move this direction?
So I can.
Those from the previous boards, have you heard this?
Yeah, that was my first question was, why are we talking about this? Like, how did it get on the agenda?
So I think that there was a desire to discuss this. Oh, remind me, Attorney Matson, I don't even have to remember. It's not something that comes up often when people call me.
I believe Tanya.
Yes, Trustee
as a
Corvalon
motion,
was.
And I seconded it.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's something that comes up often when I'm talking with residents. Many understand, given our size, that it is common for a town our size to be statutory. It's not something that I continuously engage in discussions with people about.
Yeah, it came up in Envision in our group that was doing municipal government. There was some desire to take a look at it. But I would imagine some of the disadvantages in the memo are pretty substantial disadvantages, including the cost.
Not just financial,
Right.
but a tremendous labor cost.
It's tremendous legal cost. And then in other municipalities, as people have gone down and thrown the monkey wrench with restrictive charters, it's led to places that were unanticipated. Not great. What else? Let's go around the table and see. I think we addressed one of the most important things. Why is this on the docket tonight? What else are people thinking? We're in the community a lot. is anybody hearing a demand for this?
So the idea of home rule in the town of Nederland has come up probably going back 10 years across phew, 3, 4, 5 boards, multiple mayors. It comes up a lot when we deal with some of the trickier issues in town. I believe a lot of the time it comes up in citizens is because statutory law, being a statutory town, requires us to jump through a lot of loopholes, and there is a lot of red tape there. And as was outlined, there is a way to kind of, some home rule towns have experienced that when they go home rule, they have an easier time navigating these situations. Now, there's the flip side of that. There was a strong push for this 10 years ago, and there was a group of citizens that had gotten together and, interestingly enough, thought, hey, we'll all voluntarily draft the charter before we even write the petition. Then there was some political fallout heyday, things that happen, and a lot of those individuals were not necessarily feeling like they wanted to necessarily continue to give their services to the town of Nederland, so they kind of walked with all of that homework.
Okay.
Personally, it's always been on the table. I seconded it because I wanted to know what the process was to functionally look at it. So I had this idea. I would believe that this is not something myself as a board member have any intention or desire to put currently on a ballot, because I don't have a petition with 60 citizen signatures saying they want this. Now, I believe this large of a change of government structure should be citizen driven, not board driven. We're here, we're already elected, we run as a statutory town. It works as good as any other small town government. And I would love to, if there is a big enough citizen push out there, I guess it only takes 60 signatures to get this rolling. I would love any member of the town that wants to go that way to go get those 60 signatures and come back, and I will be happy to have a discussion. But beyond that, I think it's kind of dead in the water.
So Jonathan, if there's 60 signatures, there's no discussion. It gets on the ballot. So it gets on the ballot one of two ways. We decide that it goes on the ballot, or citizens decide that it goes on the ballot. So the one thing I think can be done with the home rule is there can be citizen initiated ballot issues. And right now, ballot issues, I believe, have to come from us. So I don't have any motivation to consider home rule. I don't have any problems that I know of that would be resolved going with home rule. There's a cost, and you have to get 9 very responsible citizens to work on that, to come up with the charter. And so I don't see the benefit of doing it.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say,
Nice.
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Attorney Mattson.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to correct something that was stated about citizens not being able to get issues on the ballot, and that's not actually correct.
They
In a
can't.
statutory town, they can.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure. I politically and philosophically am in favor of home rule. I am, right? But that is not urgent. My political and philosophical beliefs are not urgent in this particular matter, or really any matter so much. I think that it is important for people to govern themselves. I think that is what the essence of democracy is, and I think that the closer that your government is to you, the closer we are to to democracy, which I, for whatever reason, fervently believe in and continue to believe in it, despite all evidence pointing in other directions. But yeah, I'm really in favor of the notion of home rule. Absolutely. It just does not seem urgent at this time for us to pursue. It doesn't seem within our capabilities as a town to accomplish what would need to be done, not only in terms of money, but in terms of time and labor and expertise. And, I think we would have to be willing to tax ourselves quite a lot, to make that happen. And we would end up paying a lot more taxes than we do now. If we moved to home rule, I think that's what would end up happening, actually. From what I'm reading here, I think we would find that we would have no choice. We would need to do it because it would incur such a tremendous burden on the town to accomplish. So, yeah, I don't think we should pursue it now. I think we should let this one lie.
Attorney Madsen, thanks for putting this together. This was the best summary I've seen. Oh, Tanya?
Yeah, only reason I even mentioned it was with this whole election fiasco and us being down 2 members, and this never would have happened if we weren't following statutory rules about how you can, phrase an election if somebody becomes a mayor. And we're going to be in this situation again if somebody in the board becomes the mayor again, which hopefully doesn't happen. No offense, but just so we don't have to deal with this again. That was why I was like, it's not the first time I've been told by Miranda, oh no, we can't do that because the statutory law says we can't do that. Or years ago when the paper plastic bag ordinance got passed by the BOT, it wasn't able to be enforced until the Colorado passed something about plastic bags statewide. Then we could enforce it. So there's been incidences where we have the ideas to do things and we're not able to do them.
Yep.
But I agree that I don't think we can pull it off. Point blank. So I agree. Let's quit talking about it. But that's the reason I brought it up. I've heard it many times. Oh, we can't because it's statutory. We can't because it's statutory,
Yep.
And, okay. So, but that's fine. I know we can't pull it off. We don't have time.
Thanks.
So I think we could have, if we had done the preparation, I think we could have, filled the vacant trustee spot in that last election. Isn't that correct, Miranda? If we had stated that was our intention?
No. Are you talking about Mayor Taylor's trustee? No.
No.
That vacancy was not created until April 19th when Julian took his oath as mayor. So you cannot have an election for a vacancy that does not exist.
Right. You can't preempt
Okay.
an elected official's resignation.
And that's state law.
Correct.
But there's a
Okay.
good reason for that, right? I mean, because when someone's elected to office, you can't just say that they're not anymore when they still technically are, right? So I kind of see why state law works this way. It feels silly when you know that something's going to happen, but you don't know anything's going to happen until until it actually does happen, right? And you could be left in such a pickle, right? If you are in a situation where you have multiple elected officials for one seat,
Yep.
right? You cannot allow that to happen. That's just unacceptable.
We had some experience with that last year.
Right. And so while you may have that situation here where if you have a current board member who becomes mayor, creates that vacancy, you can have that expressed desire that you're going to fill that vacancy through appointment of the person who received the next highest votes, but you cannot put it on the ballot.
Oh, okay. So we do have a workaround that we could choose to implement, or we could have, an appointment, have applications and appoint from that, or have another special election. So that
we on
that
6.2
problem seems
still?
minimal. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the question before the Board of Trustees is, do we want to move forward with the ordinance to consider home rule authority? I think going around the table, I'm hearing a resounding no. Can we close this one? Okay. Yeah, any public comment? Is anybody still with us?
Kathleen has a comment,
Okay,
and my guess is either she'll email it or needs to call in.
okay. Telecommunications issues?
She has to call in order to do any public comment.
Okay, got it.
So if you want to just give it a couple minutes. My assumption is that is what she is doing.
Okay.
In the meantime, just let me know when she calls. I wanted to bring up something in other business.
Okay, go ahead.
No. Which, here.
Wait, I wouldn't do other business until you're done. And Kathleen is on now.
Good. Kathleen, your floor, you want to introduce yourself?
Kathleen Chabai, 30-year resident, East Magnolia, 18-year business owner. I wanted to see, I just heard some comments that I thought were inaccurate, and I'm wondering how the town, ICORA requested Julian Taylor's resignation letter from the board on April 19th, which should have occurred before he took the oath as mayor, and there was none, and I was informed that he resigned from both seats on the same day. I think that was May 23rd. And since the town attorney's on and Miranda's here, I'd like an explanation for why Julian Taylor was under oath for 2 separate seats on the same board, and why he did not resign from his trustee spot before he took his oath as the mayor.
Yeah, it is off topic. Yeah, I think that this is, Kathleen, we'll pick this up another time, but this is not germane to what we're talking about now. Any other comment?
Yep. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Hi, Billy.
Hey, it's Billy Giblin, Old Town 196 South Tilden Street. I just appreciate kind of the education on the home rule versus statutory option. To be honest, I don't know, as much about it as I could or should, but this has been a good thing that you guys are digging into it and looking at the pros and cons, and if you decide to let it lie, I think that's just fine. But it seems like a worthwhile exercise that you guys looked at the pros and cons of home rule versus statutory.
Great. Thanks, Billy. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Do we have a motion?
You believe you have other business?
Other business.
Other business? One,
Yeah, that's me.
okay.
So I wrote a letter, and I don't think I got too much response on it, so I'm guessing nobody's interested, but I am very concerned about the town right away and the amount of dead trees and tight lodgepole trees, especially in the Big Springs neighborhood is where I drive around on. And I've seen the map showing town right away, because there was an incident last year where one of my neighbors was cutting trees in his yard and happened to cut one of the right of way trees, and the officer came to the house all mad at him and threatening him and told him not to touch town right of way trees and blah blah blah. So then I looked at the map and I can see there's a lot of town right of way that are trees in Big Springs in particular, and I'm sure it's the same as everywhere that borders a town road. And I'm wondering if we can ask, since we're doing the budget next month, to see if there's any money in the budget to take care of some of this, to cut these trees. But also, I mean, there was a tree that was down, in my neighborhood that was just kind of every time I drove by, it scratched my car. I was there until it finally fell. And there's been a lot of neglect, and I know it's because there's no money or staff. And I know it's not anything besides that, but if we're going to own this land and we're going to be directing people to not take care of it themselves, we need to find the money to take care of it. Plus, with this whole safety issue of egress, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have less trees along the road. So I'm wondering if there's anybody else that's concerned about this that would like to ask town staff to see if they could be put in the budget. We're always waiting for grants. Doesn't seem to ever materialize. So I feel like to start a small amount towards that would be at least a start. It's just getting worse.
What can you tell us?
I think you have definitely a capacity issue as town staff. We cannot take this on. We would need to contract it out at this point. And there is a financial challenge because, as a reminder, your Parks Department shares a budget with your Streets Department. And so I do think there's a bit of a financial constraint that needs to be weighed out. And then just a reminder that we still have the funds. We still have to come with a 25% match for your FEMA, and we're still determining how much, but the conversation I had with JVA is maybe 300,000. And so you do have a lot of competing financial needs for the reserves in general fund. And so I do think that we're going to come to you with a supplemental budget, and that's going to be the time to really start to weigh these things out of what's the priority. And to Trustee Corvalon's point, our intention is to do that in July. So you can start talking through
What 300,000 to what? What is that?
for the project scoping.
25% of that.
25% of
I
300,000.
understand that they're saying 300,000 to create the route along the ridge and the route, was it C? And
Right,
then
because of
also
the
to feasibility.
environmental. If we're going to pursue this funding, we should pursue it for more than just JVA engineering. You should get
Right.
the environmental components out of the way.
Get everything.
And so that's why we're looking at increasing the amount to closer
Gotcha.
to 300,000 so that if we're going to do it, let's get it all done.
Right. But do we philosophically have an issue, or do we want to continue to enforce keeping people from trimming trees and protecting their homes?
So that incident that Trustee Corvalon spoke to, I know that Nikki Dunn got involved and was like, great, thank you. You know, I think we do want to know if you have a desire to take down a down tree on town parcel, please notify town staff, but we're more than happy to work with someone who wants to do that. And I know Nikki's very interested in pulling together volunteers who want to go to our pocket parks and other town-owned parcels to help us. And so I don't know if it's something that's financial, but more of a volunteer work, come support us with this.
I was going to say the last time this was done was when Saws and Slaws was very active. Saws and Slaws had an active partnership with the town of Nederland. They're the ones that did the mitigation of Big Springs Park and a lot of the lower Big Springs area. Saws and Slaws is a volunteer-based neighborhood group. You can look into it. A lot of the folks that used to champion it up here have since kind of stepped back because they spent so much time doing it. But that is a great opportunity, and there is precedence as well as a very well-established system.
We
to
can
move
get it in
forward.
under the wire.
So
We can do it.
Good. Okay.
I have one thing for other business, and that is, do you think that we could maybe as a town just decide once and for all that we are going to post at the post office and the library?
I like the post office, definitely, because I feel like people expect it to be there.
Yeah, I'm just getting a lot of
It's in a
complaints.
case.
A lot of complaints.
I don't think we should put that on town staff because our town staff is really busy right now. We just put another special election on them on top of everything else. So if one of the board members agrees that they will go down there and post it,
Oh.
I'm fine to say.
So, no, we typically do. I guess I did send an email to Macy and Peter trying to understand maybe what that barrier is because they do go in the box to go to the post office, and we go to the post office every day. And that is historically always been the case. So I'm not sure exactly which notices we're missing and why. And so I would like to explore that more with Peter. And then also with Macy here, because I don't think it's unrealistic, but I'm curious maybe where it stopped. I'm not sure I'm aware of where that may have changed.
Yeah, I do keep hearing it, not
Okay.
just from this meeting, but there's been a few people who have said, why isn't stuff posted at the library and the PO box?
So we've never posted at the library.
Right, okay.
I can tell you that much. And if that's a desire, we can strive to do so. I would not necessarily want to change the resolution of the public noticing place because.
No.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Tell you what, then, check with your team, and if you need help, let me know. I'm happy to
Yeah.
take it down.
For sure.
So I'm going to make a move to adjourn.
Second.
Just in time. Call the vote, Macy.
Trustee Blakemore,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Baumhover,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone,
Yes.
and Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then let's adjourn.
Woohoo!
That was actually impressive, that thing on the agenda.
Yeah, no, crushed it, crushed it.
We didn't have to do both extensions.
My God, I'm tired. Caffeine all day long. And
So I was like, no.
So you should have that. Yeah, I sent an email to Peter and I was like, I don't know, I wasn't aware that they weren't going up at the post office. So guess we'll find out. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, isn't he awesome? He's incredible. Hey, we were set to meet tomorrow, but are you gonna? Bye.